Is there something live going on in here? If they're recording, it doesn't, but.
Welcome to the regularly scheduled meeting for Tuesday, January 22nd, here in Council Chambers. First item of business is Pledge of Allegiance. Councilman McAllister, can you lead us?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam Town Clerk, the attendance.
Councilor Drake?
Here.
Councilor Hurley?
Here.
Councilor Kotkin?
Here.
Councilor Manusos?
Here.
Councilor McAllister?
Here.
Councilor Montanari?
Here.
Councilor Roberts?
Here.
Deputy Mayor Council?
Present.
And Chairperson Heaven.
Here.
Thank you.
Our next item moving forward.
Mayor?
Mr. Drake?
Yes, I'd like to add an agenda item. I'd like to make a motion to add for agenda item as second council comments prior to public comments.
I'll second.
Any discussion?
Can you explain that?
Yeah, we would like to make, instead of a bunch of town councilors make a bunch of comments, we'd like to take a few minutes and just explain our recent vote on the Wilkes Farm in a clear and concise, one person say it. So that's kind of our goal. And do it before public comment so people can publicly comment on what we say. So we're trying to be fair to them. So
Rather than waiting until the end of the meeting. Yeah.
Do you have it written out?
So you want to do it for this meeting? That's what you're saying?
no, right now, because we want to make a clean comment of why we voted the way we were. Then I know we have a lot of comments that are going to come up about our vote, but this gives people a chance to hear what we have to say and make comments on what we have to say. So we're trying to be upfront instead of saying it afterwards. So that would be our goal.
Any other discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions?
Abstain.
Thank you. Okay.
I have been elected to read this, so if you would just please. Oh, I'm sorry.
The hearing, do we do that first or no?
Do you want to do the hearing first?
I just said to put it
Before public comment.
That's all. So
Yeah.
we can do the hearing
The hearing
first
item
and that's.
Okay. We'll do the hearing item. We have one hearing tonight, and this is for anybody wishing to speak on an ordinance amending the code of the town of Wethersfield, inserting section 14-22, providing for creation of a trust in the capital and non-recurring expense fund. Are there any members wishing to speak on this public hearing item? Mr. Rue?
George A. Rue, 956 Cloverdale Circle. I must admit, I haven't read the whole thing, but then again, all of the legislators around the country and in the United States, they don't seem to read half the stuff they sign anyway and vote off on. But I have a fundamentally a simple question. On balance, I think this is a good idea. I think you're moving in the right direction, okay? But it brought to mind an incident that some bill got passed in the Senate in Washington with a gigantic loophole that would permit the drug companies in these times to make bazillions of dollars for whatever. And my question is, throughout the first couple of pages on this thing, you use the term, the funding is for capital improvements and non-recurring expenses in the town of Wethersfield. Now, just what are non-recurring expenses in the town of Wethersfield? Could they be some harebrained idea to spend $500,000 on some kind of a parade or some other nonsensical thing, and the excuse being, well, we weren't prohibited from doing that? If that is truly a loophole, my counsel would be, you guys, all of you, look at it carefully, and if it is, close it. End the comments. Thank you.
Any other members of the public wishing to speak on this hearing item? Mr. Young?
Robert Young, 20 Copper Mill Road. First of all, the non-recurring expense fund that you're talking about, I would be very cautious. Your history, folks, is not good on spending. You spend all over creation. You spend more than what we have. and I would recommend not getting involved in that. You know, you had this issue coming up regarding the pension, setting up a fund for the pension. Is that also part of this?
No.
No, okay, because I was ready to talk about that as well. But no, I don't really think we should get involved in this. I think we should stick to business that's very visible to the public. I think this would end up being under the table, behind the scenes kind of situation, and we have enough of that in this town as it is. Thank you very much. Please vote no.
Any other members of the public wishing to speak on this hearing item? Any other members of the public wishing to speak on this hearing item? Any other members wishing to speak on this hearing item? Seeing none, the hearing is closed. Moving on.
Thank you, Mayor. Councilors and members of the public, please bear with me. This has been changed quite a few times, so I'll try to read it, and hopefully we'll get through all this and bring some light on some of the matters. I have been asked by my colleagues, being the majority, who voted in favor of the Drisdale proposal related to a portion of the Wilkes Farm property, to read some informational points into the record to provide clarity as to the rationale related to the vote and outline where we currently stand with regards to additional research that appears to be required at this time. The vote to which I just referred to was to allow a moderate amount of housing on one limited parcel of the Wilkes Farm. This parcel is the smallest of the four, being 1.86 acres with the house and barns. The recent vote with regards to this 1.86 acres, which is being reassessed, was based on the long-term benefit to the whole town. However, upon additional study of the original text of the referendum and further contemplation of the complexity introduced to this matter by the state restrictions on use of the land, we are in the process of reevaluating which options for use of the property comply with both state law and the original referendum upon which voters voted. The Drisdale proposal was considered by the council in order to help prevent potentially disruptive blasting on another parcel of land Drisdale has acquired in the town, and has the arrangement gone through, the town would have exchanged the 1.86 acres for a large property which the town could then have sold for the benefit of the town and thereby avoid the blasting and prevent any such future blasting a condition of sale, since the town would then be the seller. This was motivated by trying to benefit the interest of all, and by the fact that the original intent of the prior council was to sell the 1.86 acres anyway, as will be future discussions in a moment. There are, however, complications with this plan. The complications are a result of the text of the prior referendum and the state usage laws for the land mentioned previously. The original referendum for the property in mid-2009 was financed by three sources of funds, all explained clearly and in the explanatory text. One of the sources was $490,000 from the State of Connecticut Open Space Grant. By receiving this money, the town accepted the condition that the land must remain open space. This provision would not allow a farm operation. Therefore, we had open space and farming was not even possible. Regarding the 1.8 acres parcel with the house and barn property, it was not discussed in detail in the referendum text, although it was listed as part of the property to be acquired as open space. It should have been discussed as an item to be sold because the use of the monies from the Town Land Acquisition Fund had been part of all discussions prior to purchase and were used to purchase this property only in order not to be limited by the state grant restrictions. This parcel was never wanted by the town, but had to be included in the final purchase due to the Wilkes demands, but the intent was always to sell this parcel. There were even subdivision schematics put together to see how many lots and what kind of value it could get. The proceeds would go back to the town land acquisition fund. This intent relative to the referendum text as it was presented, absent an indication of intent to sell and state grant restrictions, will need to be studied to see what is possible. The town received 5 proposals, including the Drisdale and the Noack proposal, which was the closest proposal to some sort of farm. The majority of the council felt that this Drisdale proposal was best for the town for a number of reasons on a common sense basis. However, the legal contingencies need to be reevaluated first. Any future consideration for these proposals or any others in the future will be tabled until a thorough assessment of what is permissible under the state law and the text of the 2009 referendum is determined. One matter that is certain at this time is that under the terms of the council intent, the referendum text and the state law, there is no requirement to keep the house and barn, which are in extreme disrepair and largely non-historic. At the prompting of certain constituents, we met with the Connecticut Trust for Historic Preservation to look at the barns and their status. The level of historic value has been exaggerated. The cinder block barn has no historic value and is in great disrepair. The post and beam barn is only historic in the frame work only. The roof is modern era asphalt. The siding is not original and is rotting. The original purchase agreement with the Wilkes family gave them the option to take the barn, but they ended up not wanting it. In summary, there was no intent to have the farm on this property, being the 34.5 acre parcel, the 22.5 acre parcel, and the 24 acre parcel. As the state open space grant money the town accepted wouldn't allow anything other than open space. The referendum vote upon contained this statement in the descriptive text which was issued and was voted upon in public. And I have a copy of the text if anyone would like to see it. After the referendum, the state granted a 10-acre easement exception to the prior open space only requirement. The terms of the written easement need to be evaluated to see what activities would be permissible on the 10 acres. Under the easement, whether it's farming or only a community garden without equipment or anything else. Once these determinations are made, it will be necessary to review whether any proposal use of the 10 acres in accordance with the state guidelines related to this easement could have been reasonably anticipated under the text of the referendum. And I make that very clear, the referendum was not written correctly. Folks, please, the referendum, folks, I have the floor. I have the floor. Please keep your comments to yourself. With regard to the 4th parcel, folks, I will not continue until you're quiet. You could have your say, I have my say right now. With regard to the 4th parcel of land acquired in the purchase, being the 1.8 acre parcel with a house and barn, it was intended by the council in power at the time to be sold off. The rationale being that since Wethersfield's own money was being used, it could be sold. However, it was not clear in the text of the referendum explanation in that there was no stated division as to what monies were paying for which parcels, nor was there discussion of any planned subsequent sale. Therefore, whether this parcel can be sold needs to be further evaluated. Once this determination is made, it will be necessary to review whether any proposals used for the land to be sold could have been reasonably anticipated under the text of the referendum. Thank you very much. And I really don't appreciate when people come up and speak to the council. I'm very open-minded and I sit and I listen properly. I don't appreciate you people, whether you're pro or con on this, to be making comments while I'm reading this discussion. Thank you.
Next on the...
Any other comments? I just, since that was rather long and detailed, is it possible to include it verbatim in the minutes or attach it to the minutes?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
I have something to add to that. I think we've said this last time, that what we supported, we believe, was the will of the people. There were 2 referendums that supported open space. And the house and the lot, like Councilor Consol said, were always intended to be sold. I've spoken to many people that have thought that. The only reason why we own it is because the sellers would not sell the entire parcel, the farmland alone. The house had to come with it. It was purchased with Wethersfield Land Acquisition Fund money, which had no restrictions. So the intent, as Councilor Consol said, was always to sell it. The Wilkes Farm Advisory Committee came after the referendum. And that was when this idea came about to lease the land and bundle it with the home for farming use for educational purpose. And Mr. Jim Woodward, I'm not sure if he's here, he is, he was very instrumental in getting that part looked at. And we tried. The whole purpose was to maintain the open space, but to use the farm for educational purposes. And there was a particular person in mind when this was brought up, and it was a goat and cheese dairy farmer, as Mr. Woodward can probably tell you, that was interested in the farmland. He wanted to expand his business, and he ended up not being a part of this bid process. But that's why that bid went out the way it did several times. It was for that. We made a good faith effort. There wasn't a bid that met that criteria. And that's why the house and barns, or why the Drisdale bid was favored. It was the only bid, other than the Roquier bid, that left the land as open space, which was the will of the people. In the ad hoc committee report, it actually states that the 138 Street House and Barns was specifically purchased using the Wethersfield Land Acquisition Fund and has no restrictions in their use by the town. And that's where that started. They were charged with coming up with options, which they did. They came up with 46 suggested uses for the farmland. Not the house and barns, but for the farmland. And during the public process, the public hearing process, that's when Mr. Woodward and others had this idea of creating a farm for educational purposes. And the report from the ad hoc committee, which I'll read from, says, during the public hearing, there were a lot of requests to keep the land as some sort of farm in order to keep the property as it had been used or as a possible educational use for students. This wasn't the use the committee had felt feasible during the many, due to the many grant and bond restrictions, but felt it was important to pursue it further for the public's request. So this is when the state DP person got involved and said, here's a way that you can accomplish this goal, and it's to carve out 10 acres under some formula so we could bid it out that way. So the committee recommendation continues, and it says the committee felt that whether the 10 acres was leased to a farmer or a possible future athletic field, the removal from the easement restriction would leave future town councils with some flexibility in use of the 10 acres. To be clear, the committee feels that even though the easement was lifted for the 10 acres, it should remain as open space, as that was the will of the people. So the bid that was approved is completely consistent with this will of the people. I voted for that, so I know what I voted for, and I didn't vote for a bid that is trying to be, that they're trying to steer it to, that actually takes those 10 acres away from the public and gives it to one person for 10 years. If someone is honestly in favor of keeping it as open space, why would we steer it to a bidder that's already haying the property now? So the property is being hayed now. And Do we know who's hanging that now? Jeff, town manager?
Yes.
Who is that?
It's several farmers.
Is one of them Mr. Nowak?
He helps.
He helps.
He may help once in a while to
So
do that.
we're already farming the property or haying the property without any incident. So why would we want to give it away for 10 years for the exclusive use of one person when the will of the people was to keep it as open space? 46 suggested uses by this ad hoc committee that is made of respectable people in the community. So I think the question for me is, why would somebody steer it in that direction when, if they were truly in favor of open space, they would have favored the Roquet bid, because that didn't require the 10 acres. And that still would have preserved the barn and the home and the house. So what's been a little more troubling for me, though, is that is the lengths that certain councilors will go through to try to steer this bid, but as they have done that, they've misled the public, misstated facts about the process, and they've taken the time to personally assault other councilors, sitting councilors, publicly trying to incite them and the public, asking for ethics investigations, having it investigated by the police. That is not the kind of behavior that we expect from our councilors in town. I think we're pretty comfortable seeing that on the national level and maybe the state level, but it's shameful behavior for sitting councilors at this table. Wethersfield doesn't need it. And all while that's going on in the public, privately, the message from these councilors is, we want an outcry, but don't file an ethics complaint, because that'll bring us political problems. That's not what we need from councilors in this town. Inciting people to do something publicly, but privately into their colleagues in their party, saying something completely different. And what I'd like to read is something that's very disturbing that was sent to me from a posting to Wethersfield Democrats, and it came from a sitting councilor. And I'll read some of it. In response to Manousis and McAllister comments in the Current this morning, and this was after the last meeting, Democrats don't file ethics complaints to resolve issues that are best addressed competently among professionals. In truth, the Ethics Commission cannot be counted on to capably handle such a matter, and we risk political intervention. And most notably, no resolution that will prevent the sale of the farm to soccer. So I can't reconcile those two public and private comments. And not to mention that the Ethics Commission that these councilors have actually helped and in some cases made the recommendation to appoint are upstanding citizens in this town. Paul Corshane, Sheila Hennessy, a former judge, Paula Izzard, Chris Healy, John O'Leary, Margaret Gustafson, Lorinda Kuhn, Jody Latina. I think we've insulted enough people in this town, and I think people deserve an explanation. And I'm okay, and I've talked to several people in this room probably over the last few days. And if people come up with the same conclusion after listening to all the facts, I can respect that. But what I don't appreciate is misinformation out to the public, somebody saying something publicly and different privately for political or personal gain. It's time to stop being politicians and start being public servants like we were elected to do. So, and I'll go on. And what's even a little more disturbing is that the leader of this Democratic Party in town, she's also commented, I want to plan a date soon to get a group together to map out our plan. That doesn't sound like somebody who's interested in preserving open space and helping this town. It's not your party over your town, in this town. I think you'll have your opportunity, Mrs. Steinmetz. So I think what actually gave me a little bit of pleasure and confirmation that people aren't brainwashed so easily in this town is that out of all the people that actually saw this post, only 3 of them liked it. If you're a Facebook follower, you know what that means. And that's not a very good return rate. I've made several copies. People are welcome to come look at it, take it and read it during this night.
Are there other counselors wishing to comment before we move on to public comment? Okay, we'll move on to public comment. Can I just have a show of hands first to see how many people plan to speak? Okay, seeing that there's quite a few hands, I'm going to limit the time to 3 minutes so that we can allow everybody time to speak. There is also a comment period at the end of the meeting. So are there members of the public wishing to speak? Mrs. Steinmetz, your hand was up first, and then Mr. Gary.
And I would request if she would let us know whether she's speaking as a resident or the town committee chair of the Democratic Party.
I'm a resident of Wethersfield for 47 years. First of all, Shirley Steinmetz, 375 Brimfield Road. That notice that was sent out that you read to everybody was a notice to have people to protect the Wilkes Farm. It was not a political notice, okay? That was what the notice was for. I have been a member of the bipartisan Wilkes Farm Committee, and we worked very hard to have this referendum passed for open space. And I disapprove of the vote by 5 members to have the houses on this property. We always felt as members of the Wilkes Farm Committee that the perfect use of that barn and that house was for a farmer. You had that before you. A farmer would have filled all that, lived in the house, put the roof on the barn, and did haying. That's what it filled up there. I'm not quite sure with all the words that were said tonight. Are you still interested in putting houses there? Or are you looking into it?
Can we respond? I mean, we've approved the Drisdale bid, and there's a motion that's going to be, there's an item on the agenda later on to forward it to planning and zoning.
Okay, I understand. So you're still interested in putting houses there. Well, I strongly disapprove of it. It's not what the people voted for. It should be open space, and a farmer complies with that. And I also understand how the people in Gulf Road area are upset with the blasting, but I believe that you can take care of both items and have the farm with a farmer there in the open space and still be able to take care of that for open space. The voters voted for that, and you're not following what they wanted. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Mrs. Steinmetz. Mr. Gary, and then Ann after.
Rick Gary, 35 Harding Street. 3 minutes is not going to be close enough to say what I wanted to say, but I had to amend my speech here because, Mr. Manuso, I appreciate everything you said, but being on the Wilkes Farm Advisory Council, it wasn't quite what you said. Educational purpose was one of our thoughts, but because we didn't get a goat farmer, the whole deal is off. That wasn't what we suggested as an advisory council. We sent to the council that the people in the public hearings and everything we heard was keep the farm a farm, do whatever we can to do that. And we knew, we were not naive, we knew it was a long shot. We knew that. But guess what? The miracle happened. A Wethersfield resident with a generations of family history of farming was the high bidder 3 times. 3 times. Now, the second time, I spoke before on this, and I swore I would never come back, because I knew you all had made up your mind to give the property to Drisdale. So I said, why waste my time? I was right. So basically, we had a guy willing to do everything the council stated. In the paper, you stated over and over, we are going to get a farmer. Our number one goal is to get a farmer, and you got one. But you didn't take him. And he was the high bidder. He was going to renovate the house and barns. And he was going to hay the back. Even if he didn't, he was going to renovate the house and barns. It doesn't matter what he did back there. We were going to save the agricultural heritage of that property. And you said no. Now, in that meeting, not one person stood up and said, I suggest we build 6 McMansions on that property. Did anybody say that? I never heard that. Of course not, because saving the agricultural heritage was the number one goal. You stated it over and over. The citizens stated it over and over. Drisdale came out of nowhere. If you want to save Goff Road, save it. Don't give up the farm to save that piece of junk rock. Sorry. And this is a no-win situation for anyone. We lose the farm forever. The Goff Road residents still get houses built next to them. They don't get open space. He's paid $175,000. With a conservation easement, it's going to be worth less. They're still going to tear trees down. They're still going to build, I think you're going to, somebody said maybe 2 houses, even if it's 1. Nobody gets open space on Goff Road. Who wins? Drysdale wins. He gets a prime piece of real estate instead of a rock on Goff Road. So I don't see how this is a benefit to the town at all. How do we win at all? I don't get it. And as far as being on the advisory council, I'm actually a little upset at the kind of, I want to call it revisionist history, but the way you're portraying what we said to the council as our recommendations. As far as the 46 other recommendations, that has nothing to do with the house and barns. That was sledding, nature trails, all the other stuff on the other part of the land. And when we found out we could separate 10 acres, the only purpose we did it was to entice a farmer. Again, we're not naive. We said, if it doesn't work out, oh well, we tried. We still get to keep the 10 acres, and then we can do something with it. Oh, my 3 minutes are up. And so basically what I'm saying is, we don't win at all with your proposal. Only Drysdale wins. Now, unfortunately, I have no idea how to shut this off, so you're going to have to put up with that. I just got the phone. So anyway, in my opinion, it's a lose-lose for everyone except Drysdale. Do not vote for this. It's bad for the town.
Thank you, Mr. Gray. And then
You may be a tough act to follow. Okay, I would like to introduce myself. Greetings to the members of the Town Council. My name is Ann Griswold Willard. I live at 72 Old Mill Road in Wethersfield. I've lived here my entire life. Just to give you a little bit of background, I do have a very brief statement to make and 2 points to make in my statement. But I first would like you to know that I grew up in an agricultural family with a long agricultural heritage in the town of Wethersfield dating back to 1640. But who's counting years? I have a degree in agriculture from the University of Connecticut, and I'm an agricultural education teacher. I love agriculture, and I love education, and I love farming. My roots run deep, no pun intended. I did have the opportunity to walk the property, so I am very familiar with the property, the buildings, and the state that they're in, and would like to now give you my 2 points. They're brief. The best use for the Wilkes property, house, and outbuildings is to sell it to a person who will be a steward of the land adjacent to the preserved open space. One who grew up on a farm and a person who has the talent and ability and motivation to repair historic and various other buildings that need restoration. I do believe that we need to use this space wisely and appropriately, and that is to allow Rick Nowak to be the owner and custodian of the property on Willow Street, formerly known as the Wilkes Farm, or still known as the Wilkes Farm. Excuse me. In addition, I would like to remind the members of the Town Council that once agricultural land or open space is covered over with more houses and asphalt, that it likely will never revert back to its original use. Residential property owners should not have to bear the brunt of the tax burden needed to operate the town of Wethersfield. It is time to stop building more houses as a way to increase revenue and focus on the commercial and business opportunities that are evident in the vacant buildings on Silestein Highway and the Berlin Turnpike. Please reconsider your decision and allow Rick Nowak to purchase the Wilkes property. Thank you very much.
Woman in the red shirt. The woman in the red shirt. And then Peggy.
I'm going to give you a copy of the referendum. I don't listen to people who talk. Thank you. I like to see something in black and white. I'm an analyst. It takes me forever to make a decision, but I look at every angle and I read everything very carefully.
I'll add it to the 3 I have.
Sorry.
Your name?
I'll give it to you in 1 minute when I get up there.
Thank you.
Thank you. This is the first time I've spoken in 4 years. I spoke at the first referendum, so please bear with me. My name is Brenda LaBella. I live at 34 Deer Ledge Lane. Now, when I say I'm an analyst, this is what I believe the truth was, because there's nobody talking in my ear, there's nobody saying blah, 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 blah. So I'm just gonna list, this is the referendum that we all voted on, okay? There's no ands, ifs, or buts in the columns or in the paragraphs. And I'm just gonna point out 2 things on here. It says the property includes the house and barns located at 138 Willow Street. I'm sorry I didn't highlight that, but I assumed everybody knew that before I came to the meeting tonight. Okay. This explanatory text for the purchase of the Wilkes Farm property was authorized by the town council for the May 12, 2001 referendum and mailed to residents of Wethersfield. If this is not truthful, it's not our fault, is it? Okay. I'm going to read 3 lines from that. The town has applied for and received approval from the state of Connecticut for an open space grant in the amount of $490,000 to help offset the cost of the purchase. If the grant is accepted by the town, the land must be preserved as open space in perpetuity. Nowhere does it say that the grant applied to parcels 1 or 2 or 3 or whatever, or 2 acres here or 10 acres there. In addition, it does not state that the town on its own would not uphold the open space designation into perpetuity. When I and other volunteers in town asked Wethersfield registered voters to sign a petition to save Wilkes Farm as open space, which resulted in this referendum, I had about 125 signers out of about 140 people I canvassed. Of these 125 that signed, 4 or 5 asked me why the state had to set conditions on the purchase of this land. They said, we trust our Wethersfield elected officials to uphold the mandate of the people as determined by the results of the referendum. The result of the referendum per the Hartford Courant on May 13th, 2009 was 3,522 in favor of the purchase to 2,124 against. If we cannot trust the town council to abide by this mandate, who can we trust in today's society?
Ms. LaBella, could
you want to
summarize?
leave a legacy to your children, then leave them the meaning of the word trust. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Wagner, you had your hand up?
Wait, I'm going to say that.
My name is Peggy Wagner. I live at 203 Clearfield Road in Wethersfield, and I had the opportunity to be an elected official in this town back in 1991, and I was on the Board of Education for 2 years. I find it shameful that you would vote on a proposal that you discussed for over 3 months without knowing what this referendum said. I find it shameful. You are elected officials. You should never vote unless you're very sure of what it is all about. And this referendum pretty much spells it out. I'm in favor of keeping the Wilkes Farm totally as open space, which is what the referendum in this town, which this woman was so eloquently stated, was for open space. And I would hope that the next time you vote on this, it doesn't have to be given back to the manager of this town to tell you, wait a minute, you voted for something that you can't do.
Thank you. Mr. Hickey?
Good evening. My name is Joe Hickey. I'm at 28 Meadowview Drive. I'd like to say I am opposed to the town council proposal to trade Wilkes Farm land for Goff Road land. I'm particularly concerned about the proposal to include in that trade not just the home lot, the 1.8 acres, but some of the so-called permanent open space area. I find this contrary to the citizen intent expressed in the 62.5% support for acquisition of the farm, and especially with the no-act reuse proposal, a far more appropriate reuse option. Thus, I strongly urge the town council reconsider its decision. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hickey. Yes, sir.
Lou Locavoli, 247 Ridge Road. I'm speaking as an individual, although the thing that prompts me to speak tonight is that I am, and have been for many years, a member of the board of directors of the Wethersfield Soccer Club. And I'd like to reference the petition that I've heard and read so much about, which mentions the soccer club. And I want to make sure everyone understands that that petition was not a soccer club product. The soccer club didn't draft it, endorse it, sponsor it, or approve it. We never even discussed it at any of our meetings, much less did we vote to approve it. Some of the people who drafted or signed it might have some relationship to the soccer club. They might be parents or coaches or even players or former players. But they were acting as individuals, not as representatives of the organization. Thank you.
Thank you. Other members? Mrs. Rosania, then Mr. Wagner, and then Chief.
Betty Rosania, 88 Desmond Drive. You may bring us out in the winter, in the spring, the summer, in the fall, we'll still be here. I don't know how many ways to Sunday we have to say it. We have organized referenda. We have given our input. We do not have your bully pulpit, but we want that land kept in perpetuity as open space. How much open space do we have in this town? Are you all councilors familiar with Bell Pond? That is a piece of open space that was acquired in the early 1960s. I started work in the office of the town manager in 1968 and was instrumental in helping acquire Bell Pond, the 1860 reservoir. At the time, it took 5 years to acquire the 1860 reservoir. We had, as we have with you, Mr. Bridges, a very far-sighted, forward-thinking manager at the time, and we went through condemnation to get it. I don't think there are people, even though they may not want condemnation, I don't think there's anyone in Wethersfield who doesn't appreciate the 1860 reservoir. As you can see, you have a house packed, and as I said, bring us out every season. Try something different. Try a different approach. Maybe you can find another builder. Maybe you can find another developer. Maybe you can find another town. We are right here.
Mr. Wagner?
Town Council, Mayor, I want to thank you for this opportunity to come up here again. These past weeks, I've come up almost every meeting in my support of the Wilkes Farm. The first time I came up, I remember saying that I represented the thoughts of many of my friends. Here they are. So thank you all for coming. I want to express my view to save the farm once again. And I'm going to try to keep it as carefully worded to keep it as simple as possible, because there's been so much confusion brought about because of the bids and all the discussion, but it really comes down to 3 points. As several people have mentioned already, the Wethersfield town voters, your constituents, passed 2 referendums, one for $4 million, one to purchase the Wilkes Farm as open space. And I can assure you that the general voters, your constituents, did not anticipate that there would be any development on the property. I think everybody will attest to that. The second point, the town council went against the open space criteria. I believe you brought up the criteria of open space. The town has it on, it's on your website. 6 points. The first point is avoidance of town services. The second one is natural resource protection. Third one is Wethersfield heritage, which includes farming. The fourth one is quality of life, which includes athletic activities as well as a buffer between housing. The fifth one is revolves around having a strategic plan, and the town does have a strategic plan because I'm listing it right here. The sixth one and last one is recreational opportunities, as in the use of natural land for hiking, etc. So of those 6 points regarding the open space criteria, 5 of them are met by the sale of the property to the Nowak farmer. Lastly, my third and final point, the numbers just don't add up. By permitting the Drisdell development, you are throwing away approximately $220,000 bid, the Nowak bid. That was for, I believe, $220 with development, $208, I think, for without development rights. But accepting a lesser value piece, I think everybody agrees. The property was purchased for $170 to $175K. Drisdell says it's worth more.
Mr. Wagner, can you summarize, please?
I will, in one sentence. Thank you so much, Mayor. Drisdell says it's worth a lot more, but I don't believe so. I believe that you are having a net loss of $50,000, and I believe even Mr. Young would agree this is fiscally irresponsible, wouldn't you say, Mr. Young? So in conclusion, I am here to support the sale of the Wilkes Farm to the Nowak offer and to not develop the property with Drisdell.
Thank you. Chief?
T. William Knapp, 171 Collier Road, Wethersfield. Kind of threw me off with this lettered presentation, so I'm going to throw some quick comments out. First of all, with regard to the ethics, first of all, I'm unaffiliated. I hope you all know that. And I want to state for the record, I have received none of the information that I've dealt with or used to value my judgment from any Democrat on the council. As a matter of fact, I haven't had any discussions with anybody with the exception of Mr. Manousos and Mr. McAllister. With McAllister, it was by email. With Manousos, it was both email and phone conversation. And so, and there isn't, I mean, I've gotten no misinformation from anybody. that I know of, at least from the Democrats. Another thing I want to address is the land acquisition fund that Ms. Lobella said there. I believe the name of that fund has been changed. When that referendum was over, there was a pact that we had, and we made a contribution into, and we were told at the time by the manager and the finance director to make the check payable to what was called the Town of Wethersfield Open Space Fund. And we wrote specifically on that, I don't remember how much it was, whether it was 200 or 2,000, but it was donated to the Wethersfield Open Space Acquisition Fund. I want to start by saying I don't enjoy getting up here and doing what I'm about to do, but it's, you know, right is right. And I think that there's a misunderstanding in the public. The public, with the vote on that referendum, they weren't familiar with the fact that you were able to carve out 10 acres off to the side or not. And when it comes to that ad hoc committee, I don't know if there was 2 ad hoc committees. 3 of us that are here tonight were on one. It was Mr. Drake's. I don't remember that language that I think Mr. Manousos, you read, or Mr. Council, I don't remember who read it, but I don't recognize that. But I want to make one comment, because frankly, I'm angry. I think the electorate is angry. When it comes to a statement that you made, Mr. Manousos, about taking one position in public and one position in private. Oh, by the way, I'm glad to see that the soccer club stood up and disowned this ownership for this petition. Sorry, Mr. McAllister, in this petition that you signed here, you make an open statement that you support the town creating additional soccer fields. In an email that you sent to one of your constituents on Thursday, January 10th, 2013, at 6:23 p.m., I did not support soccer fields, and I would prefer not to have soccer fields installed in the future. That would prevent that's, you've got copies of this. I'll leave a copy of that there for the record. That was provided to me by a citizen that overheard me on the telephone talking about Wilkes Farm. I'll be the first one to state for the record that nobody that I know of here has any ethical violation within the...
Can you summarize?
Already, huh? Okay. I think you got moral ethic violations, and you should have put them on the record. You too, with your affiliation with the soccer club, Dave, with your mother backing up to the property on Drysdale's property. I'll save the rest of my comments for afterwards, because I'm not done. So, but I think the electorate is angry, and I think that they'll have their way ultimately. Thank you.
Thank you. In the back.
Hi, Beth Hackett, 507 Brimfield Road. I just have a very basic, simple point to make. That, from what my understanding, from my involvement with this, is that the driving force behind holding the referendum was the threat of a developer purchasing the land and building houses. That was what brought about the referendum. So I'm very disappointed to hear that now the town council has voted to allow a developer to build 6 houses on the property. I really think that goes against the nature of the referendum. And I just urge the council to reconsider their vote on this issue and to do what the citizens voted for them to do. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Way in the back. Sorry, Mrs. Parker, couldn't see you. Hold on just a second. Just sit in the front.
I'll be quick.
Thank you.
Mike Cuddigan, 49 Westbrook Road. Before I say what I want to say, I want to qualify a couple of things. I'm a soccer fan. I go to a lot of soccer games. Having more fields in town for the kids would be a good thing. I've also had a few minor business dealings with the NOACs in the past, not in the last 6 or 7 years. However, the fact that 2 councilors, McAllister and Manousos, had the deciding votes to go ahead with the Drysdale plan is, to my mind, a clear violation. I'm not a lawyer. Maybe technically that's not true, but it smells like a conflict of interest to me. For that reason, even if it's a good idea to go with their plan, that vote should be rescinded and revoted with those two persons abstaining. Thanks.
Thank you. Now, Mrs. Parker.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of the council, and Town Manager Bridges. I'm former Deputy Mayor Judy Parker, and I live at 366 Pine Lane. I have been up nights trying to understand why I am so upset at your decision to award the Wilkes Farm bid to Mr. Drysdale instead of a local farmer. Number one, I like Mr. Drysdale. I've met him. I know him. He's a fine man who builds lovely high-end houses. I have nothing against Mr. Drysdale. 2, 6 of you came on to council following the 2009 referendum and were known to be unhappy with the outcome of that referendum. Kudos to Mayor Hemmen for being honest about that, but respectful enough of the referendum process to accept the votes of the majority decision. 3, the Wilkes Farm house and barns bid has gone out 3 times. 3 times you have not given the bid to a local farmer, even when his bid was the best proposal. We, the public, don't know what goes on in executive session, but something doesn't feel right. It appears that you're trying to get around the referendum result. 4, we do know that the issue has been clouded in many minds because of a separate Goff Road proposal supported by letters from neighbors and a separate soccer club petition. You've clarified that to some extent. However, each of these presented to council a petition or letter with a list of names. I'm not sure of how many, but I think less than 100 probably in total. The townwide 2009 referendum had over 5,600 people voting, and it was won by 3,500 votes. Isn't there some strength in numbers? 5, the petition is especially troubling to me, since a sitting council member actually signed it, and it promotes one bid over the others, and the use of some Wilkes land by an organization, the Ritchie Soccer League, whose president is another sitting council member. The petition was received in the midst of council deliberations on the latest bids. Now, I want to say this is illegal, but it probably isn't. It may not even be unethical in the strictest sense. But I can tell you, there are people in this room, including myself, who have sat in your chairs and would never, never have considered signing a petition or even being associated with a petition or some similar action with such an apparent conflict of interest while negotiating bids. This is exactly the kind of action that makes us, the public, distrust our politicians and gives you a bad name. It just doesn't smell right. I'm sorry, after your explanation, I still have to say that. Number 6, the saddest thing is that you have turned a past townwide bipartisan effort by our residents into what now looks like a partisan issue. You have been a good you've been a good council in many respects, especially trying to control costs in a difficult climate. But you may have found an issue that will bite you in the back. I'm going to close. I have 2 wonderful poems by Dr. Jim Streeto about the pasture land. I'd like to read them to you, but I guess my time won't let me. Please do yourselves a favor and honor and respect the referendum which supported the concept of farming as well as open space and enforce the rich tradition of farming in Wethersfield. Please reconsider your vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Parker. With the white hat.
Susan Grady, 25 Westlook Road. We, the people of Wethersfield, have spoken twice on the issue of Wilkes Farm. Through 2 referenda, the people have asserted that they want Wilkes to remain open space. They do not want it to be developed. Any new construction will be ugly and out of place because it is totally incongruous and unsettling to the peaceful, bucolic setting and open space the land currently provides and will continue to provide for generations to come. That is the long view, which I hope all on this council embrace, and that nothing is done in a short-sighted manner detrimental to the town and against the will of the people. Thank you.
Thank you. Lady in the red hair, and then the gentleman on the aisle with the glasses, and then Mr. Rubin.
In the red hair.
Sorry.
Rita Owen, 42 Wells Farm Drive. I think it's pretty obvious that the intent of the townspeople, your constituents, was to keep that open space without housing development. The recent Planning Committee for Conservation and Development took a telephone survey, had meetings, and the results of that were pretty obvious. Something like 52% want more open space and more spending for saving farms. So after listening to everyone here tonight, I would just ask one of you 5 counselors who voted in the affirmative to, why not tonight, bring it back up for a vote and get this over with and just overturn your present outcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Rita.
Hello, my name is Paul Golino. I live at 25 Farmingdale Road in Wethersfield, and I really didn't plan on speaking tonight, but after a couple of the comments that I heard, I kind of have to let myself be heard on what I have to say. You know, you guys are sitting up here and you guys are calling councilmen saying they have no integrity, they're taking backroom deals, they're doing this, they're doing that. If that's true, I want to see the proof of it, if anybody took anything. I don't believe they did. I think they're standing up for what they believe in is what's best for their town and their views and their children. May not always be the way you guys like it or the way I like it, but it's what they like. They're council members, they were voted there, they deserve to vote. You're absolutely right, it is our town, but it is theirs as well.
Quiet.
It is theirs as well. And to sit here and tell them, as town residents, they're not allowed to vote because they're on the council, read the Constitution, that's part of what it is. They have a vote, they have a say, as do I, as do you. Gentlemen, for whatever it's worth, I applaud you for standing up for what you believe in. Thank you.
Mr. Wu?
Ma'am, I'll have you removed. I'll make a motion to have you removed if you speak one more time.
Let's keep the calm, please, huh?
Yes, I can.
Let's keep calm. George A. Rue, 956 Cloverdale Circle. I have nothing to say. I couldn't say anything as eloquent as been said, but I will give all of my time to Judy Parker so she can read the poem that she was not permitted to read. Judy, would you come up and finish your poem? Certainly it's all right. It's my time. I'll read it.
Judy, you can read them at the end for the public comment period. I want to let the people speak, please, who have not spoken.
You can't give your time to someone else, George.
Who says?
George, you can't give your time to someone else.
Are there other members of the public wishing? Yes, ma'am.
George, if it wasn't for us, you wouldn't be able to speak at these meetings. Am I right, George? If it wasn't for us, there'd be no public comments.
Raise their hand.
There's somebody over there that wants to speak.
Yes, ma'am.
John, did you say that?
I did.
Okay, just want to know. Make sure I know.
My name is Joan Biagioni, and I'm almost afraid to tell you where I live. 217 Goff Road. I know. I've come before this council many times, and at one point after I gave my whole spiel about why I want to have them, swap Drisdale's property for the 2 acres of farmland. And then at the end of my talk, and you were sitting there, because you were mad at what I said out in the hall, you said to me, I said, so I was talking to Pam Rapaz, who was the former registrar of voters, and she said to me, So why does it have to be either or? Why can't it be both? But the problem was, when I went out in the hall, I didn't get people who were for the farm to try to work with me so that we could like work together. Like, they didn't want to hear me. So I have to tell you, I really support your, I know you, I don't expect an applause, but don't throw any tomatoes. I really respect what you said, and the gentleman standing in the back of the room, I thank you for what you're saying, because I think they did what they felt was best for the town. And there will be 10 acres of open space, and across the street there's quite a few more acres of open space. And you know, none of you live up on Goff Road, Round Hill Road, Forest Drive, Cedar Street, Desmond Drive, Farm Hills Village, all the people that live there. I know one gentleman said, my mouth is so dry, one gentleman said, well, we don't want that rock. Well, you know, it's not really a rock, because when I look out my window right now, I see the beautiful woods, I see the trees with the snow on the branches, I see the deer, the turkeys, and so forth. And you know, that's may not be farmland, but that's open space. And that's really important to us. So we're not against it, but I'm telling you, we could work together, it'd be great. Because we want that as much as you want the farm, okay? Thank you.
Thank you, Joan. Other members of the public? Yes. Jim?
Jim Woodworth, 5 River Road. I want to thank you, Councilman Drake and Councilman Console, for that great meeting last Monday at the Wilkes Farm with Todd Levine, Connecticut Trust for Historic Preservation barn expert, Buzz Willard, local barn expert, Amy Northrop Whittorf, Wethersfield Historical Society director, and farmers Ray Bednars and Dave Anderson. I wrote, I think it's safe to say, I thought it was safe to say we confirmed that the Griswold-Wilkes hay barn is indeed historic. Furthermore, we explored the possibility of saving that barn by dismantling it and reconstructing it on Historical Society property behind the Francis House. Based on ballpark estimates provided by Jim Bennett of the Glastonbury Historical Society, moving the hay barn several miles away from the hayfields that the town invested over $3 million to preserve would cost $100,000. The Glastonbury Historical Society spent another $275,000 to bring their tobacco barn up to code to use for the program. As many have said, the last thing we need in Wethersfield is another museum we can't afford to support. And that's why we have to sell this property. And I knew that in the beginning, and that's why I hoped that a farmer would buy it. And I had a farmer, but you guys diddled around too long, and you couldn't get him. And you didn't recruit him, and you didn't try. So anyway, what can I say that will convince you 5 men to change your votes and allow Rick Nowak to devote his personal fortune and sweat equity to preserving Wethersfield's agricultural history? I'm going to start by doing some historical context. I'll do his context, 379 years of Wethersfield agricultural history in a nutshell. 1640, Michael Griswold, seeking greener pastures, left England and became a large landowner in Wethersfield. At the turn of the 20th century, my grandmother grew up on a Griswold dairy farm at 227 Griswold Road, one of 60 dairy farms in town. The hayfields and pasture have long since been developed into great suburban neighborhoods, but the farmhouse has been lovingly preserved into the 21st century. But my grandmother, one of her sisters married a farmer and left for New Milford, Connecticut, and one of her brothers went to Nebraska. At about the same time, about 3 Polish families left Poland for greener pastures in Wethersfield. Kowalczyk family established a farm on Goff Road. Nowak family raised turkeys and beef on a farm on Knott Street. Tom Nowak, 3rd generation, inherited the family farm, keeps the only herd of cattle in town. In 1914, Stanley Wilkes bought a 15-acre farm on Willow Street. By World War II, when Poland was in flames, the Wilkes family farm was prospering, supplying milk and pork from their 80 acres on Willow and Thornbush and their 40 acres in the meadows. But in 1944, the Wilkes dairy barns caught fire and burned to the ground. By that time, Bill Griswold's Signal View farm on Maple Street had been bisected by the Silestein Highway. Griswold's fine post and beam barn that had served him well for over 60 years was lifted up and moved all in one piece up over Harris Hill, up Prospect, and down Willow to the Wilkes farm.
Mr. Woodworth, can you summarize, please?
Not really well, but let me say, skipping over the rest of the history, the 11 generations of Yankee farmers, 3 generations of Polish and Italian-American families as expressed through the Wilkes Hay and Dairy Barn, saved by the voters of Wethersfield, it's in your hands. If you guys had foresight and belief in open space preservation, there would be at least $1.2 million of bonding authorization available to buy that $175,000 property on Goff Road and help those residents out. But you allowed that 2006 bond authorization to sunset in 2010. The onus for failing to help those neighbors falls on you and not on the outcome of neighbor against neighbor. And to
Jim?
further summarize, it's no shame. In fact, it's a badge of honor to change your mind and do the right thing by following your leader who grew up in that same Griswold farmhouse and the voters who elected you. Thank you.
Other members of the public? Yes, in the back on the aisle.
I just have a tiny little story. I'm Lou Parker, and I live at 366 Pine Lane, and I go with Judy. Years ago, when I was a much younger physician and part of an Indian guide tribe, one Sunday afternoon, our Indian guides, with their dads, went over to the Wilkes barns to watch dairy farming and watch how milk was acquired and learn all about that. One kid member of that Indian guide tribe was Chris Murphy, our new senator. It was very convenient for us to go from the Murphy's house around the corner to the dairy farm. It's hard to imagine. We know that there's no more dairy farming any longer, at least there, but it's hard to imagine that other young people might want to learn something about farming and might not have the chance. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Parker. Yes, on the aisle with the green sleeve.
Hi, Peter Suska, 52 Hawthorne Way. I've been involved in the Wilkes Farm campaign for quite a long time, and I can't say any better what a lot of these folks have already said. And I also have to say that I don't think anybody who was in favor of the Wilkes Farm is not in favor of any other open space in this town. Please understand that. We're just trying to hold the council accountable to what they said they were going to do. And that's all this is about. I'm a bit upset. It seems like there's more frustration on this side of the room than there is on that side of the room. I would like you folks to align yourselves and be effective at the will of following the will of the people of this town and what you've committed to. I thank you for the opportunity, and I also thank these folks. Boy, I'll tell you, there's nothing like listen to these folks to make you feel important while you're an American. So thank you all for your comments.
Other members? Yes, in the back. John, you want to speak too? You can go next. No, not next after Mr. Smart.
Robert Smart, 62 Church Street. Very briefly, I voted for the referendum for that open space, and I trusted you all to follow through on that vote. It was very clear that we had voted for open space, and it's very disturbing to hear that maybe we're going to do a little bit of a double cross. We voted for it knowing that it puts increased tax pressure on each of us, and we were willing to pay that cost. I'm not willing to have a subsidized housing development as part of my tax burden. Thank you.
Thank you. John?
John Miller, 45 Highland. I tell you, it's a tough night when you're sitting home just thinking you're going to watch something entertaining on television. This is the most entertaining thing on there. But, you know, listening to history get cited and distorted and whatever is being done here tonight, I think I have a little bit to add. And frankly, I'm not even sure I have a horse in the race today, from what's being discussed. But how did we get in this mess? Do you recall some of the same people that are telling us that everything was done wrong had a big responsibility in putting up on the town website a 15 or 16 lot subdivision in this damn piece of land, which is a big reason the town paid twice what it's worth. If you didn't pay twice what it's worth, you may have had a farmer come along and be doing what you want done. But listening tonight, frankly, the emphasis seems to be on open space, and I'll give Councilor Manosis the 5 stars. He makes the point that what he's saying gets you the maximum open space in town, I think. I think he made the point very well. Somebody citing our grant that we, I don't think I heard the word farm mentioned, and I think the individual was saying they're reading. Now, I haven't got a clue whether half these people reading what they're citing from is accurate or not, but I know a good deal of what I learned or feel right now is what I hear on this program here tonight. But I will say, I'll go right back to, and I said it at the time, if you pay twice what something's worth, somewhere along the way, you're going to get in trouble. You tried to sell it once, you put your price on it at, I guess, based on what you paid, the bids came in at half. And you're in that position now. But if the emphasis is on open space, and anybody listening to this program tonight, Councilor Manosis makes his point. That's my saying.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. Yes, in the back? Mr. Flynn.
Good evening, councilors. I'm Brendan Flynn, 109 Springdale Road. Like Judy, a former deputy mayor, although we sit on opposite sides of the political aisle. I guess on evenings like this, I'm glad it's former rather than sitting, but you know, just in following up on what John Miller said, yes, there was a lot of debate in 2009 over whether the voters were being asked to pay more for the property than it was worth. There was a lot of debate as to whether it was more worthwhile or a greater benefit for the town to purchase the property and preserve it or build houses. Voters heard those things. There was full exchange of views in the marketplace of ideas. The voters voted, and they decided to buy it and preserve it. And we should honor that now. Now, the folks up on Goff Road raise a valid point. They have a lot of concerns about the development of that parcel. I grew up near that parcel. I can see it from my mother's front door. You have the opportunity to protect that parcel, honor the letter and spirit of the referendum by bringing in someone who will farm the property, and that will generate the funds in order to purchase the development rights of the Goff Road parcel and preserve it to the extent possible. So please, listen to the voters, honor what they're telling you tonight, honor what they said at the ballot box in 2009. Thank you. If I may, Donna, just one more point. I know and respect all of you. I don't believe that anybody up here is acting with either an express or implied conflict of interest. I believe that you're doing what you believe to be in the best interest of the town. I just happen to disagree with the vote of the majority. So, thank you.
Other members of the public? Mr. Young?
Good evening, Robert Young, 20 Copper Mill Road. I, for one, had voted against that purchase of that property. I've always said more than once from this podium that the town has no business buying property that they're not going to use. And look what you have today. You have special interests right here that voted and connived in order to get what they want. I mean, we all knew, I did not know that there was a 10-acre parcel on that property that was not protected. I just thought the house and whatever that little bit of acreage was. But as time came along, I started hearing about that well after the sale had closed, well after the sale had closed. And it really made me wonder what in the world's going on here. And I do know many of you members of this council, and I don't trust any of you. Don't trust you. And I think you all know that. Because of things that happen up here, how you vote. I mean, we know there's members up here that now we know. There are members up here who are gun-ho soccer fans. And since the vote of last week, I started hearing, well, that 10 acres, they didn't want the farmer to rent the 10 acres because the soccer people wanted that 10 acres. So I've been told, so that's what I've put together from what I've heard. And I believe that, actually, Mayor. Right to my heart, I believe that's how it was. Because I know some of these people. I know how they act. I know how they vote. And I would, I had made comment along the way that maybe you should sell the property to the farmer and turn that money over and go and do something on the Goff Road and buy that. Whether you buy it, and the only way you could buy it is outright. You're not going to go buy the development rights. You have to buy it outright. The seller, the guy that owns it, Drisdale's not going to sell you his development rights and then own it. You have to buy it outright. But you have a lot of places in your budget that you can, I think the word was used not long ago, raid. You remember some of the raid words that were mentioned not long ago? I think that you have a lot of areas in the town hall and the Board of Education that you could get some extra money and buy out that. Take the 200 and whatever thousand is from the farmer and buy the Goff Road property and finish it up. Again, I did not think, and I still don't think you belong as owners of the Wilkes Farm.
Can you summarize, please?
Because of, look at this mess we have. But since the way it is, that would be my suggestion, and I've suggested it before yet. Soccer appears to supersede everything else. Thank you very much, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Young. Other members of the public? Yes, over in the back on the right.
Hi, Tracy McDougall, 45 Knott Street. First, I want to thank you for your time, especially tonight because the meeting's going on for a while here. I want to ask those folks who are in favor of selling the Wilkes Farm parcel to please, please, please reconsider your position. The intent of the voters was to preserve that as open space, and while technically you may be able to move forward with your plan, honestly, I mean, I sound like my daughter. It doesn't really seem fair. It just doesn't really seem fair. And voters overwhelmingly support of preserving that, the farm. The open space and our agrarian history is what makes Wethersfield really a unique place to live. And you have a chance to help preserve what makes us unique and an attractive place to live. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Someone in the back had their hand up on the right side of the room. Am I right? No? Okay. The lady right here.
Hello, good evening. My name is Amy Nix. I reside at 854 Ridge Road. Been a Wethersfield resident for 13 years. Couple of things. I also did not vote for the original referendum because I knew we were overpaying for the property. And I personally don't think that we, as a people and a council, have the place to buy, develop, and try to imitate developers, because as town elected council members, that's not what you do. And I just don't think we have the business of doing that. We're not professional at it. And like we said before, now we're in a conundrum about what to do with this. But the referendum did pass in 2009, and based on the actual letter of the law, which is what we all voted for, I would make a suggestion that you do abide by what you did, what the Wethersfield residents did vote for, and modify your decision. And then just to finalize, I don't understand how someone can accept bids for property and receive 3 high bids and still decline all of them. I just am kind of curious about what our bidding process is. And if you're not scratching heads wondering why the bids weren't coming in where they should be, maybe you're scratching your head wondering why we overpaid for the property in the first place. So, thanks.
Thank you. Yes.
I'll make this brief. I know you guys are probably exhausted, but Sue Skian, 105 Straddle Hill. I was the treasurer for the original Save the Farm proposal, and like so many have said, the intent was never to develop any part of that land. The intent was clearly to keep it as open space. So I think just from that perspective, I think we should stay where we were. Also, from what I've been reading, I mean, my background is finance, money. I'm looking at the numbers, and nothing adds up in the by exchanging one property for the other. The values, what you're going to get, what the outcome, it just doesn't make sense. The numbers just don't add up. The person that seems to make out in this is the builder. And from my perspective, that's not what I'm looking for our town to do, to take care of the builder. I'm looking for people to take care of the townspeople. And lastly, I guess I've read a lot of this stuff. I don't understand, and maybe that's something that you need to do better at, is to get out, communicate why we've had 3 bids. We've had some excellent offers that would kind of fit with the original proposal, and nothing has happened, and all of a sudden Drisdale comes out again. If you want to protect your own person, what you're doing and everything else, I would suggest that you communicate a little bit better as to why that hasn't happened, because it's clearly not clear for the rest of it. I'm not accusing it, but it's just not, it doesn't make sense. So my suggestion is, if it does make sense to you, then you communicate it very clearly to the public, because it's not out there right now, and it's very discouraging. Thank you.
Thank you. Other members of the public wishing to speak? Yes.
My name is Dan Lagash, and I live at 78 Windmill Hill. And I just wanted to ask the council to reconsider their vote. I think the people have spoken how we all feel about this, but there's a couple of things that puzzle me. And there weren't too many people here in favor of your vote, which kind of tells me the majority has spoken. But one other thing puzzles me. If this, and I hope it doesn't happen, but if the builder comes in there and builds 6 houses or whatever, high-end houses, do you think the people that buy those houses are going to say, okay, we're going to allow a soccer field to come be built in back of us? And then we're into another jackpot, and I think we ought to follow the wishes of the people, and please reconsider your vote. And what an old timer told me one time, he said, for you folks that vote against it, your pride is the hardest thing to swallow. Thank you.
Other members of the public wishing to speak? Yes.
Hi, thanks for listening for just a second. My name is Lila Mandor, and I'm at 420 Ridge Road. And I'm new to Wethersfield, and I wasn't here for the vote in 2009, but I did read the referendum, and it seems very clear to me that it was a referendum for open space. And it's also clear that the referendum was passed by a majority of the voters. So, you know, voting is a fundamental right, and if we take the time to get out there to vote and we vote a certain way, and the majority votes, I mean, that should really be listened to and upheld. So from what I hear tonight, it sounds as though the vote was for open space. There was no specificity in the referendum to say there was going to be some parsed out of it. And I heard somebody say, I don't know who it was, but somebody said the referendum was written incorrectly. So if it was incorrect and it passed, then it should still be upheld. If it was incorrectly written, then it shouldn't have gone through if that wasn't the intent. So I would ask that you listen to the majority of the people here and reverse your decision. Thank you.
Thank you. Other members of the public wishing to speak?
Pete Ryan, 244 Willow Street. I'm just here listening to everybody, and I'm about to say what everybody's already said, that you reconsider the Wilkes Farm, I believe, what is your decision. I don't understand where I heard this woman mention 2-point-something acres before. If this is a land swap, isn't there a 1.86 acres or something here with the house? That I'm confused. And then I heard somebody mention 2-point-something acres. Are you combining some more land to this portion? And if you are, with this, what do you call, easement, or with 10 acres, I'm wondering where the value between there and Gulf Road is, considering you paid $175,000 for the other property. And it's now hearing soccer in here. I know it was in the current, but I didn't know if that was part of this discussion. But I'd like to know where all the parking will be once they go soccer fields. If it's open space, you're going to asphalt the farm? I mean, I'm trying to figure your rationality here for the soccer fields now, and I'm a little confused. So I, at this point, wish this council would use some common sense, some straightforward thinking, and figure out all the problems that are going to come after this. And if you are putting some more land to this portion to swap land, what stops you from putting more land and swapping with somebody else in town eventually? You're creating something that you've opened the door to or something, I don't know. But the referendum was wrote wrong in the beginning. I think the town hires lawyers. Are they involved in all this stuff before, when you bring it up, before it goes out to vote? We pay good lawyers in this town, don't we? So let's reconsider and put everybody's thinking here the same, what's good for the taxpayers of this town. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there other members of the public wishing to speak? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on with the agenda. Council reports.
Donna, didn't a woman want to read a poem? We're going to let her do it at the end of all the...
At the end of the meeting.
Oh, at the end of the
under public
meeting?
comment.
Oh, okay.
Any council reports? I did attend the Housing Authority meeting last week, and also the Conservation Commission meeting last week as well. Councilor Roberts?
Yes, just a report on the Senior Citizen Advisory Committee met last Thursday. Two items. First of all, the Senior Services Coordinator, Donna Madison, who's been with the town for 11 years, is retiring at the end of January. So want to wish her well, and she will be hard to replace because she really has, she's made the senior center what it is today, and she's really brought it from a very small operation into a functional organization. The other thing is every year the Senior Citizens Advisory Committee sponsors a seminar in the spring. They've done stuff on financial planning, all sorts of topics of interest. This year the program is geared for seniors and anybody in the community who's interested. It's a program called Car Fit, and it's a cooperative program among AARP, AAA, the American Occupational Therapists Association, and Hartford Hospital's Injury Prevention Center. Basically, they will take appointments, and you come in with your car, and they will basically see how the car fits you and you fit the car, make adjustments and suggestions as to how you can drive your car in a more ergonomic fashion. The program will be from 10 a.m. in the morning, 10 in the morning till 2 in the afternoon. So it will be advertised, and as I say, it's May 4th. It sounds like an informative program.
Jerry, is it only by appointment?
There will be a few drive-ins, not walk-ins, drive-ins allowed at the end, but a preference will be given to people with appointments. It takes about 20 minutes. So there's a limited number of slots, so people should really call for an appointment if they're interested.
Okay. Councilor Drake?
Yeah, CIAC met again last week. They have one more meeting with Parks and Rec. Then they should be putting together recommendations for the year for capital improvements. And infrastructure also met last week, and we will be bringing forward item 4A, which is the Energy Committee is asking to allow them to fund an RFP or fund a contract to go out and put together an RFP for performance contracting. We'll talk about that under 4A.
Councilor Cotton, you had your hand up?
Thanks. The insurance committee met last week. I was out of state, so I didn't attend, but there are probably a few things worth mentioning. One is that the claim data continues to be quite good for the town, and we're well over $1 million below budget currently in terms of the expenditures on health care costs. Number two is the town currently is looking for bids for the healthcare administrator. Remember, we're self-insured, but we currently have Anthem as the administrator. We're asking for a number of bids to see if we should stay with Anthem or if there's something more attractive. The town's administration with the insurance carrier is going to be putting together numbers for next year in terms of what we need to budget for healthcare. You know, it's something that used to escalate by $1 to $2 million a year. It seems to be flat to lower, so that's very positive for our budget and for tax rates, since about 1 out of every $8 to $10 goes to pay for retiree and active employee health care costs. And I guess the last piece is at the meeting there's also likely to be a recommendation that's going to come to the council concerning extending the current agents of record for both our health care costs and our health care administration, as well as our property casualty. I think the committee feels they've done a very good job, and every 3 years we need to essentially re-up. We rarely make changes, but we did a few years ago on property and casualty. I think the committee is very satisfied with the performance so far, but I believe this has to go to the council for reappointment for 3 years. And that's it. Thank you.
Other council reports? Okay, moving on to council comments. Any council comments?
I'll just make another comment regarding the will of the people that everybody's talked about. I think we're mostly hung up is the definition of open space, and to me, the definition of open space, it's implicit that there's public access. And so the NOAC bid does not allow that. And so that's really the problem for me. If there's a solution outside of that, then I think everybody would be willing to revisit it. but we're supporting a bid that allows public access to those 10 acres. And there's already haying going on. So that's what we would have to reconsider if we're going to do that. So I just want to make sure there's a distinction between open space and farming, because that doesn't, yes?
Can we walk on the property of the 6 houses that Driscoll's gonna build there?
No, but if the property's
No?
if the
10
10 acres, I'm sorry, but the house and barns, I've already told you where I thought that was. That was separate. That was separate from the 10 acres. I don't know how you have open space on a facility with structures that somebody will own privately. That's not open space. That's privately owned property. So 10 acres, if it's given to one person for 10 years exclusively, it's not open space. There's 70 other acres that are currently being hayed. There's no contract for that. That gives them exclusive rights to lease that property. That's open space. People walk their dogs on it like my wife does. The kids go sledding on the hill. That's open space. So the only thing I would support and reconsider would be a proposal that would leave those 10 acres as open space. Giving it to somebody for 10 years exclusively, one person, because it would be a lease between the town and that person solely. That's not open space. That's not the will of the people. That's not what this referendum says. It doesn't say that the land must be preserved as open space and farming. It says as open space, and open space has a definition. So that's the distinction. I don't think anybody's saying they wouldn't revisit something, but there is a distinction there. So hopefully that clears some of it up.
Councilor McAllister?
Yeah, I'd like to second that. I mean, I would definitely revisit entertaining this. I think I was the only council member that actually supported the Roquier bid because it didn't develop the housing and yet left the acres open for public access. Unfortunately, if I had went that route, nothing would have happened with the RFP because we needed 5 votes. So I had to make a decision. Do I want to take 10 acres out of the hands of taxpayers who paid so much money for that property, or do I want to preserve that 10 acres? And that's why I made my decision. If there were more people that supported Roquier, we might be having a different conversation today. Or if NOAC was interested in just purchasing the house and barns, it might be a different story today. But unfortunately, none of that played out. So that's how I made my decision. I interpreted open space as public access, and the flyer that the committee put out actually said if you voted in favor of saving the Wilkes Farm back in 2009, they would guarantee public access in perpetuity. So not really sure how you guarantee public access to that 10 acres or to that 1.86 parcel if you sell it to anyone. The only way to guarantee access is to just keep it, which means we would have to find quite a bit of money to either take down the barns or rebuild them, which I'm not sure that we have the money or the will to do that at this point. The second thing is, I've heard a lot of people talk here today about Drisdale winning. And I agree, it looks like the builder's winning. And originally when we were talking about this, I had a conflict about, I didn't think council owned steering development from one part of town to another, right? So that was my big internal struggle to deal with that. But the people that are saying Drisdale wins, I obviously got over that because I looked at the holistic approach and what I thought was best for the town. But the people that are coming up tonight saying that, you know, the NOAC proposal, Drisdale doesn't win, I find that amazing because, again, if you look at what the motion was, okay, we were going to sell the property to NOAC. We were going to give up 10 acres to a single individual with no public access. Then we were going to take the $200,000 we got from NOAC and give it to Drisdale and limit him from blasting and only building 2 houses there. And then he could turn around and sell those 2 properties. So he paid $175,000 for the properties, okay? He put a lot of engineering site work, which is probably $50,000, so you're up to $225,000. And then we're gonna give him $200,000 just to limit the blasting. We would have no money in our coffers for any open space in the future, and then he can turn and sell those 2 properties at, let's say, $200,000 each. that's where Drisdale wins. So I don't understand when people are coming up here, if you understand what the NOAC proposal that was put in front of us really meant. So I appreciate everyone's comments and thoughts. It gives us a lot to think about, but I would encourage people to find out more information about what you're speaking about. And if you're going to say that you're going to argue that open space is hanging and restricting public access and you're okay with that, that's a great argument to have. I don't believe that, but we can discuss that because those are facts. But coming in and saying Drisdale wins and I'm a financial person and I just don't see how this makes sense, look at the NOAC proposal. That is a financial mess for this town.
Thank you. Other councilors?
Point of order, didn't you move council comments up in the agenda?
We just added another one.
We added. It was added. Other council comments?
Rick, you get one at the end.
Don't worry. Mine is sort of a procedural issue, because I heard the statement that was read at the beginning, and then I heard the people speaking out here, and then I just heard Stothy and Jim talk about ways that they would look at the issue again. So this is where I'm confused now. Procedurally, because I'm the only one who likes to talk about Robert's Rules of Order, if that's true that people want to reconsider, and this is you guys, tonight's the only time you can do it, because it has to be at the next succeeding meeting after a vote is taken, and it can only be done by people that voted in the majority. So if what you're saying about reconsidering and looking things is true, tonight's the night you would have to do that. And I was confused because John was talking about doing more research on stuff, so I wasn't sure where you were headed with that, but I just wanted to put that on the table that, as they say, this is the moment, this is the hour. If you're going to reconsider it, it's now.
Okay, thank you.
Otherwise, it's a done deal.
Other council comments? Council Cashman?
Just a few comments. And this is in response, and I don't want to belabor the point, but one is there was never, I'm not aware of any council member calling for a police investigation. I've certainly never suggested that there should be an ethics complaint filed. In fact, if we learned anything from the Board of Ed situation, it's a bad precedent if one council member files an ethics complaint against another, given that any finding by an ethics board would have to go back to the council. So I think that would be a bad precedent. The motion I made did not contemplate that the Goff Road property would be broken up into 2 parcels that would be built upon. So I just wanted to clarify that. I think that was noted earlier that we'd have 2 houses built. There is 1 house on the property. It's quite run down, and potentially, if the town either bought it or if it acquired development rights, potentially a new owner could put up a nicer house, one that's better for the community around there. But the idea is essentially that the proposal that we made, that I made and was seconded and failed, unfortunately, in the last meeting, was that we would take the $205,000 that Mr. Noack bid, and we would apply that to acquire development rights or the outright property purchase on Goff Road. There's a very, very steep slope on Goff Road. There are a lot of people who are very concerned that that slope, if it were developed, even though it did receive subdivision approval, that it would definitely worsen the neighborhood. You would lose trees, you'd lose the slope, and I think all of us up here are hoping that that doesn't happen. But potentially, there is a house, there is a garage up on top of the hill that's quite run down, and perhaps, whether it's Mr. Drisdale or somebody else, could make that into something that's better for the community. But he would not be able to build any additional homes up on that property. That was what my motion attempted to do at the last meeting. So I just wanted to clarify a couple of those pieces. I didn't want to do that until after I heard from the people who came here. I really thank everybody. I think there were almost 30 speakers who spoke to us about that, and I think we all learned something due to that. So I really appreciate you coming out, and hopefully we'll find a solution that everybody in the room and hopefully everybody in the town will agree to. Thank you.
Yeah, if I can just clarify too, that motion included a 10-year lease too. I think you left that part out, Jeff.
Yeah,
that's not open space.
Oh no, I did mention the 10. No, it did include a 10-year lease, and I think that it would have been helpful earlier today if you had also mentioned that there's about 30,000 square feet of property that's not part of the 1.86 acres that has the house and barns currently that would be built upon. There would be 2 housing lots on about 35,000 square feet that I think most people assumed was going to remain open space.
Along with the 10 acres.
Deputy Mayor.
Councilor Kuiken, if I may, on your motion last time, you did mention you wanted to use the funds from NOAC, which would be considered, I believe, open space funds to buy development rights from a private individual, and the town would get nothing in return. If you, on your motion, so that property, even though we bought the development rights, someone would buy that property. So in essence, you're using taxpayers' money that should go back into open space fund to purchase development rights, which in turn, someone would buy that property, and the entire town would have nothing to show for it. Am I correct?
I think, as I mentioned at the last meeting, I live in that area and asked for the town attorney for a ruling as to whether I had a conflict, and to determine that I did not. So I did vote on this, made the motion and voted on it. I think if you poll the people who live in that neighborhood and you said to them, right now there's an approved subdivision for 5 houses on Goff Road, and if this went through and there was no, the owner of the property gave up development rights, so at best you would have 1 house at the top of the hill, I really don't think that the people in that neighborhood would think that you got nothing out of it. What they are getting out of it was they wouldn't have the slope basically demolished, they wouldn't have the trees removed. To say that you'd get nothing by basically eliminating a 5-lot subdivision in one of the most difficult parcels probably to build on in the entire town from a grade standpoint, I just don't think that's correct.
Well, but I think you didn't answer my question. I, as a taxpayer, pay taxes. Part of that tax money goes into open space funding, right? Which I would think would be used to buy open space that the entire town could use. Walk on it, sit on it, have a picnic on it. But what you were proposing was to take that money, buy development rights on private property. That's where I had my big issue with your motion. And by having that, the property gets sold off, so I can't sit on that property, I can't have a picnic, I can't walk on that property because it belongs to a private person, so you're using the taxpayers' money to buy development rights, and we get, the taxpayers in the town get nothing back for it. The people on Gulf Road may get something back because there's no house built across the street, but no one else could do anything with that. It's not considered open space. So you're using open space fund. That's where my big concern was with your motion. You were using open space funds to purchase private property that the town could never use, never walk on, never fish on, never do anything with. That was my big concern.
Okay. Well, of course,
is that correct? Is that a correct statement?
Of course, the motion said purchase or acquire development rights.
Okay. Other council comments? Okay, Mr. Town Manager.
I have nothing this evening.
Madam Town Clerk?
I had 3 communications considering the Wilkes Farm. One is from Patricia Mulrain on Old Common, and she was surprised and had sadness that she observed on the vote to sell a portion of Wilkes Farm property to a local builder for development, and she urges that you consider your vote, reconsider your vote. Based on the following 3 issues. It was incorrect information regarding historical significance of the barns, a statement that we need to increase the inventory of homes in town, and realtors will say that that is incorrect, and she requests that the council members who have ties to the Ritchie Soccer League or signed a petition recuse themselves. Then I have one from Gail Griffin, who I think it's on Desmond Drive up there. thinking that it was a difficult decision that she agreed with, but she believes that preserving the Golf Road Hill would require planning and zoning subdivision guidelines be made to prevent the reckless development of that. And she trusted that the property, that if Drisdale did get the property, that they plant a buffer zone of trees between the open space and the development. And the other one is from the Mirabellis, Peter and Janet, that would wanted to commend the council for deciding to swap of the Golf Road house for building lots on Willow Street. The Golf Road, we on Golf Road are very excited that 214 Golf Road will remain as a one-family residence and no future plans for multifamily additions can be added, and that the second highest point in Wethersfield will be saved. That's it.
Thank you. Moving on to council action, under number 1A, acceptance of resignations from board and committees. Do we just have appointments?
We have appointments.
Okay. 1B is...
No, excuse me, we have a resignation.
Is there a resignation?
It's B1A. It's Inland Wetlands and Watercourses Commission.
Right.
I don't have it.
Yeah, I just can't get back to it.
It should be in the...
It's in the packet.
Do it, Donna, because I've got it in front of me.
Okay.
Resignation from boards, Mark A. Council for Inland Wetlands and Watercourses, 695 Wells Road.
And a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Dolores, can you please send him a note thanking him for his service on the committee? Now moving on to appointments to boards and commissions. We have several.
Appointments to boards and commissions, Design Review Advisory Committee. Andrea L. Boyle was reappointed, 703 Walcott Hill Road, from 1/22/13 to 1/1/2016, and Stephen C. Hine, a reappointment, 294 Hangdog Lane, 1/22/13 to 1/1/2016.
And is there one more?
I've
It's in
got
the
two.
packet.
I've got two, Donna.
Okay.
I don't have it in my packet.
Inland Wetlands, Chanel DeTillo, 84 Round Hill Road, term 1/22/13 to 6/30/13, and Design Review Advisory Committee, Joe Hickey, reappointment, 28 Meadowview Drive, 1/22/13 to 10/1/16.
Can I have a second?
Second.
All of that? Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions? Thank you. Next on the agenda is action 1C, action on ordinance amending the code of Town of Wethersfield, inserting section 14-22, providing for the creation of a trust in the capital and non-recurring expense fund. Can I have a motion, please?
I'll make that motion to adopt the ordinance referenced as chapter 14, excuse me, funds, Article 6 in the Code of Wethersfield as presented.
And a second?
I'll second it.
Mr. Town Manager?
Thank you, Madam Mayor and Council. Before you this evening is an ordinance which would create a trust in the capital and non-reoccurring expense fund. We currently have a capital and non-reoccurring expense fund for capital expenses and non-reoccurring expenses. It's a legal term within the Connecticut General Statutes as a mechanism by which towns can fund capital improvements. The proceeds, several years ago, the town was participatory in the sale of the CREC facility, or excuse me, the Northeast Utility Facility to CREC. Our primary concern at the time was the generation of taxes from the building. Through negotiations with the parties, a one-time payment in lieu of tax of $2 million was provided to the town. And at the time, the desire was to put that in a revenue-producing fund that would replace the lost taxes without touching the principal. This ordinance is that vehicle. So annually, the interest would be used to supplement the capital and non-recurring fund which wouldn't receive as much taxes due to the sale of the property and the loss of the property from the grand list. So that's what this is for. There are mechanisms to protect the principal from any action of the council. It needs 7 members. So I think this is the product of the discussions we've had, and staff recommends approval.
Any questions of the town manager? Councilor McAllister?
Just a question, if this wasn't established, where would that $2 million have been put?
It would go in the general fund,
Okay.
which if you wanted to move it somewhere else, you would then have to appropriate it out of the general fund into something else.
Right.
Are there any other questions of the town manager? We have a motion on the floor. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions?
Abstain.
Excuse me, was Ms. Roberts, no? Okay.
Are you all set, Dolores?
Yes, so I have 1 no and 1 abstain.
Correct. So the motion carries. Next on the agenda is number 3A, the referral to the Wethersfield Planning and Zoning Commission per Connecticut General Statute 8-24, the acquisition and disposal of the land located at 214 Goff Road.
I'd like to table that motion.
Second?
I have a motion to table. Is there any discussion?
Let me just make a comment. The reason why we want to table it, we're still waiting for some information from the Board of Education before we can make an informed decision.
We're on 3A.
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 Yeah, right.
Yeah, the teacher's contract, right?
No.
I'm reading the wrong thing then, sorry.
We're on number 3A,
I'm ahead of
David.
myself. Okay.
3A
Okay.
is that?
The referral to the Planning and Zoning
Oh.
for the 824.
Oh, we skipped by 2.
Yeah,
we
would
skipped
be
it, that's
2A.
Yeah, so
Unfinished.
we're not doing anything with
It's
that.
still unfinished business.
Correct.
So I think David was
So
looking
the
down.
motion to table is on the correct item? It's on
Yep.
3A, correct?
Yes. Yep.
Yes.
So we have a motion to table. Any questions, discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
No? Any nay?
Nay.
I vote no. And abstentions?
Abstain.
Okay, that motion passes to table. Item 4A, bids of request for proposals. This is the Celtic Energy to act as owner's agent in the solicitation of proposals for energy savings performance contracts. Can I have a motion?
Wait, which one is this, Donna?
4A, bids.
Motion to authorize the town manager to execute a contract with Celtic Energy in the amount of $29,000 to provide owner's agent services for energy savings performance contracting.
And a second?
I'll second it.
Mr. Town Manager?
Thank you, Madam Mayor and Council. The Energy Committee has been working with, going through a process, an RFP process, for an owner's representative in the process of doing performance contracting, which is an evaluation of the buildings and their energy use to see if the buildings can be upgraded and the savings of the upgrade, the energy savings produced from the upgrades, can pay for the improvements that produce the savings. It's a common process that a lot of towns go through. There are several that we've talked to. Chairman Drake of the Infrastructure Committee has participated in this process. The $29,000 is coming from the Energy Committee's funds through the Direct Energy Program and some other funds program funds they've received. So at this point, the town attorney has reviewed it and found it acceptable. The Infrastructure Committee is recommending it to the council. And I don't know if Chairman Drake.
I'd just like to add the Energy Committee, again, they're using funds that they've collected through their programs over the last year or so, and this is I guess you say the next step, they're prioritizing, this is what they want to do. So I think it's a good plan, that's what they want to do, so I think we should accept the effort they put forward and see if we can get this thing going.
Any other questions of the Town Manager? Okay, we have a motion on the floor. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Thank you. 4B, approval of additional interior and exterior environmental testing for the Wethersfield High School school renovation project. Can I have a motion?
Motion to approve the additional, oh, I'm sorry.
Yep, that's it.
That is the motion, all right. Motion to approve the additional environmental, interior and exterior environmental testing as proposed by the high school building committee in an amount not to exceed $138,905.
And a second?
I'll second it.
Mr. Town Manager?
Thank you, Madam Mayor and Council. As part of the renovation process, an environmental evaluation needs to be conducted of not just the building itself, but the exterior property. And that's why this is divided into two separate pieces. The exterior testing will be conducted to locate the 3 underground, or to define the locations of the 3 underground storage tanks. We know, generally speaking, where they are. That testing will, by sound penetrating radar, show us the exact locations, and by the soil sampling, will determine the extent to which, if any, soil has to be removed with the tanks when we decommission those tanks. The one under the building will not be removed. It will be, they'll test around it to see if there's additional remediation, but it'll be pumped out and filled with sand and decommissioned per DEP standards. In addition to the testing, the areas where there's new construction exterior will be tested for any contaminants, and that will be done together to the greatest extent possible to limit the cost of the testing equipment on site. And that's the $56,000. The interior testing, due to the preliminary testing, there were 20 bulk samples collected by the environmental consultant, and there were traces of PCBs found in certain materials. Therefore, in order to satisfy EPA and DEEP requirements, additional testing must be done. Paint, surfaces is one piece, and then there's a detailed and very site-specific round of testing with up to 400 additional tests of the mastics, the tiles, the glues, and caulk, to make sure that when we develop the construction plans, the remediation efforts are complete and thorough. So the idea is to do on the interior, to do the paint and the wipe sampling completely throughout the building. And then there will be a round of 200 site-specific tests. And from those 200, they'll narrow, if there's areas that need additional testing, use an additional 200 tests that are in this proposal to narrow that down for remediation purposes and for construction budget purposes. Some of those tests will be preserved in case any materials have leached into the substrates, meaning the brick or the cement, and some of that will be tested as well. So this is a comprehensive testing solution necessary in order to pass through DEEP in the EPA on the building project.
Are there any questions of the town manager?
And consultants are here this evening to answer any questions.
Okay.
And so is the chairman of the building committee.
Councilor Martinelli?
Well, with the consultants here, I certainly approve us going forward on this, but one of the things I noted in the article that was in the Current was a less than satisfying and somewhat uneasy commentary about whether there was any safety issues in the interim for students who are at the high school today. So maybe that can be addressed. I mean, I certainly am going to vote for this, but I didn't come away from that sensing, and maybe we need to have somebody from eventually the board side come out and see us, but it seemed like that was not a question that was answered with confidence with respect to the day-to-day while students are in there while this is happening.
Christine, do you want to come up with the consultants?
Before I have them speak, Councilor Montanari, to address your concern, as soon as it was brought to the superintendent, the town manager, and the building committee's attention that there was a high level detected on the 5th floor in an encased area, it's not exposed, it was through testing that it was identified. Steps were taken immediately that weekend to take necessary precautions in conformance with EPA standards. That day, the superintendent sent home a message through the telephone system and through written correspondence to families, children at the school, noting the item. And also Paul Hutchins, our Director of Health Services for the district, was informed, gave his opinion of the situation, did not see any harm to children and to staff at that time, and also provided families with information about PCBs, a fact sheet, if you will. So that's where we are and what's necessitated additional testing. And I'll let the hygienist speak.
Yes, Larry Cannon with Environment Services. We will be performing air testing for PCBs, and we'll be doing it as a safeguard. We feel the school is safe. However, it's prudent, according to EPA protocols, to do the air monitoring. And we will do that. That's part of our proposal, to actually do air testing and wipe testing of those areas in school.
And if there was some reading that suggested, what are the typical responses if your testing results in some
Well,
elevated
EPA allows you to do the testing for the air and wipe tests. There are guidelines the EPA established, and they allow you to do an operation and maintenance plan. So there are strategies the EPA approves. If we find levels that we're not comfortable with, the EPA will allow us to do some interior abatement, and there have been some plans to think about doing that in a few of the areas in the school. So it's pretty standard protocol for, first of all, you find this in construction not uncommon. You respond by doing air and wipe sampling, certainly the right response, and followed by developing an O&M plan, which is recommended by EPA. So we're following all the steps in accordance with what the chairman mentioned.
Any other questions of Christine?
Christine, how is this in line with our budget?
We're within budget, so we can afford this, no problem.
Okay, so there's no cost overrun with this going on?
We're taking some additional funds from the design contingency, but that's why we have that.
Okay, and what's the amount of that?
The amount for the testing is roughly $50,000 from the design contingency. The goal of this is to lower, based upon the 20 bulk samples, which the way it's done, I mean, the building's huge and we took 20 bulk samples, so of course we were going to find something. So now we have to narrow that down. But based upon that, for design purposes, the remediation number escalated. Mm-hmm. So through this more thorough testing, we want to bring that remediation number back down in the budget because we've used other contingencies to account for the remediation number at this time. So prior to bidding in the spring, we want to get everything resolved so the remediation number is valid and supportable.
Right, so we had 150,000 budgeted. We're taking just over 40,000 from contingency to cover the total.
And what's the total contingency at this point?
Well, right now we're at 2.7%, so just over $1 million. $1.3 million perhaps is left in the contingency.
As we move forward, can we get an update with the contingency and what the amounts are used for so we could track it all as we move forward? Is that possible?
I believe, yeah, we've sent that
Absolutely.
before and
Yep.
we can
Okay.
continue to send that.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions of Christine or the consultant? Okay, we have a motion on the floor. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Thank you. Next on the agenda is minutes of the special meeting for January 7th, 2013.
Mayor, excuse me, I just had a question on the agenda. We're leaving the teacher's contract on under unfinished business, or did we skip it?
We're leaving it. We're not taking it off the table.
Okay, so that'll automatically go into effect because our next meeting won't be until after the
Unless
30
we
days.
if we call a special meeting.
Okay. All right, thank you.
6A, special meeting minutes for January 7th, 2013. Can I have a motion?
Motion to accept the minutes.
A second?
Second.
Any correction, addition, deletions?
I think
Yeah, hold on one second. Oh,
Go ahead, Stan.
no, go ahead. I'm trying to find that. There was one. That
Oh,
there was a change.
I think the meeting, I think we're talking about the meeting at 6 PM, because it was before our regular meeting, the
Yes, so the time is incorrect.
time's incorrect.
Because I called it to order at 6:10, so. Just at the
I
top,
changed,
Dolores.
Dolores was under council reports, the second.
This is the special meeting stuff.
Oh. Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
Any other corrections? All those in favor of the special meeting minutes of January 7th signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, abstentions. Next on the agenda is 6B, the regular meeting minutes of January 7th, 2013. Can I have a motion?
Motion to accept the regular meeting minutes for January 7th, 2013.
And a second?
Second.
Councilor Manousis, you have correction?
Yes, Dolores, under council reports, the second line, starting the budget discussions for this coming fiscal year.
Oh,
That's it.
yeah.
Okay, any other corrections?
Couple. Just above where Councilor Manousis is mentioning, I think former Mayor Rosania's name is not correctly spelled. And that's on page 3. And then on page 9, I don't know if I should be noting this, but I think Councilor Manousis responded that Councilor Kotkin has comprised this process. I'm not sure that was the verb he used. I think it may have been compromised.
Yes, it was compromised.
Any other corrections? All those in favor of the minutes as corrected, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, abstentions, thank you. Public comment, are there members of the public wishing to speak? Ms. Knapp?
I'm Elizabeth Knapp, 71 Highland Street, and as you can tell by my voice, I'm not a public speaker, but I do have a comment I'd like to make. I was very active in promoting the yes vote for open space. The one point I'd like to make is part of the overwhelming open space vote was to halt building of new homes. In my opinion, putting 6 houses on the, can't read my own writing, 6 houses on the property would be a blight on the attached precious open space, and the 10-year lease is a small concession in the overall picture. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Parker, do you want to read those poems?
I do have a quick question that I wanted to ask. I also had read Robert's Rules before I came because I couldn't quite remember the exact phrase about how you ask somebody to reconsider a vote. And I also got the impression that if you were going to do that, you had to do it either at the same meeting or the next regularly scheduled meeting. So can I assume, since nobody on the prevailing side has done that, that that is not happening tonight?
Yeah.
Because it depends on what happens next, for some of us who are involved in this. I haven't heard it, so I'm assuming it's not going to happen? Okay. I learned a wonderful lesson from Eleanor Wolfe. We're all in this together, and even though we have very many differing points of views on very many subjects, it's nice to have a little culture involved in some of these discussions. Anyway, Dr. Jim Strito is a resident of our town. Some of you know him, some of you may have been in school with his children. And during the course of the referendum several years ago, he was moved to write some poetry. He had retired recently, and he's written 2 poems that I thought were especially nice. This is in his The Pasture Seasons book. And I'm just going to read 2, and they're short. The first one is called The Empty Pasture. The pasture's empty now, the swing gate open, in welcome perhaps. Still I dare not trespass. The milk herd has gone, where, I do not know. But the pasture is not barren. There is a profusion of wildflowers, with their necessary apian visitors, where rabbit and mouse move quickly under the circling gaze of the hunter-hawk aloft. No, the pasture lies as an unframed green and fertile masterpiece, teeming with smaller life. But the milk herd has gone, where, I do not know. This second one is called A Pasture Kept. The pasture vacated, dairymen and herd long gone, today is fresh mown. Fresh mown, the green gold grass sheared and shone, laid down to dry, soon to be hay. Swallows skirt and map its boundaries. Hay-bound, bundled into rolls, stand like houses of thatch. Last year, all winter stood, snow-capped and frozen, taken away late in the spring. Our town has secured this pasture to remain unchanged, except by nature's will. The generations to come may see and feel the wild of it as its elemental truth. Dr. Jim Strito. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
Hi, my name's Eileen Candles. I live at 106 Windmill Hill. And thank you for the time of everybody here tonight. I know this has gone long, and I so appreciate all the comments that everybody's said, and also would hope that somehow we can preserve the space over on Goff Road or protect it in more of the context that it is in right now. But I just had to add a couple of points to clarify, because I've heard something that's a little bit different today than what I understood before. And first, I guess I'd clarify that, to me, being someone who, my first very, shall we say, political action was to get out and speak to a lot of people about this property a number of years ago. I had never been involved in anything like that, and to me, overwhelming, the voice was the voice of wanting to preserve lands as they are now, the farm as it is now, and to prevent development, as so many have pointed out, or further development. And to me, and to how I understood that voice and that vote, it would be against this swap and the establishment of 6 homes on that small piece of property and jutting into the field. Secondly, the way that I understood how the RFP was written, it was written with the intent and the priority to be on an agricultural use, with no ex proposal both complying with being in spirit and in line with agricultural use, as well as being the highest bid. So to me, 2 points for them. And lastly, a couple of other comments. I've lived near the fields for over 12 years now, and haying is what I would call passive farming. It would not be the kind of farming that has animals roaming around on it. It happens 2, sometimes 3 times a year. It's not exactly something that would prevent dog walking. It would be something that I would certainly say is in harmony with the spirit of open space and the ability for open space to be walked upon, cross-country skied upon, etc. Additionally, maybe one last comment is, I've taken my children out into those fields. We've enjoyed those fields. When we sit out there, when we have a picnic, we don't go down onto the Wilkes farmhouse side in the wetlands and sit in the wetlands and gaze upon what could be 6 large homes. We instead would sit at the top of one of the hills and look out on the hill and enjoy the haystacks and enjoy the farming agricultural sense of it, as opposed to wanting or choosing to look at 6 more large homes. Thank you, and I hope you reconsider your vote.
Thank you. Mr. Wagner? Mr. Wagner?
I'm afraid you're going to call my wife again. I apologize for not saying my name the first time I was up. Joel Wagner, 203 Clearfield Road. So I didn't want to negate my previous comment before the town council meeting started. I still want that to be official. I want to clarify some things about farms. I grew up on farms in South Dakota and Iowa before I moved to Connecticut. And I do want to say that all of the buildings are restorable. In fact, many of the buildings are in better shape than what we used when we were farming in Iowa. So they surely are restorable and can be used again. Clearly, one of them is historic. The siding may not be historic, but the framing certainly is. The white barn, the one with the concrete block, I believe you call it, is not historic, I agree, but it's classic. And these particular barns are becoming fewer and fewer as they're getting torn down. So even though it's not 100 years old, it might only be 50 or so, It is still a classic barn, and it has many years of service left in it. As I mentioned a few weeks ago, when I was up here before, the whole decision has been complicated by the use of the 10 acres in the Gulf Road property. And councilpersons, I want you to consider separating the three issues. One is the farm. There was an RFQ, a request for quote to sell the farm place. There's the Gulf Road property, and then there's the 10 acres. The 10 acres has always been an ancillary part of this situation. It was not the core of the original intent of the RFQ, but it was merely to take advantage of the 10-acre use. It is certainly not a part of the quote to buy the farm place as it was originally offered. The Gulf Road property, I admit, I don't want to see that blasted either, but if we could separate these three things, we could solve the problem one step at a time. Sell the farm place, then figure out what to do with the 10 acres, and then figure out what to do with the Gulf Road property. That way things are much more logical and you can figure it out. So I urge you to do that. Thank you.
Betty Rosanna will be next. You're welcome.
Betty Rosanna, 88 Desmond Drive, and full disclosure, since Judy Parker did, I am a former mayor of Wethersfield, and I wanted to thank you all of you, for your forbearance in listening to us and in going into such detail, leaving no stone unturned. As I sat there, I jotted down a couple of quotes that come to my mind and are so important to us as citizens of this town, as citizens of America. We may be of different opinions at different times, but always may it be said we are at heart on the side of truth. That's Voltaire. The other one that I remember so well is from Rachel Carson in her book, Silent Spring. She began with a quote from Carlyle, from nature's, and I'd really like you to think of this, from nature's chain, whichever link you strike, 10th or 10,000th breaks the chain alike. And maybe that is how we look at each parcel of land. As Jim Woodworth said, we had 80 farms in the 1800s, and we have 3 working farms today. We don't make new land. More than that, I think that now that you are about to begin the budget session, or that you will be going into budget session soon, I formally and publicly request that you put as much money as you possibly can into whether it's now called the Open Space Fund, or Land Acquisition Fund, or Farm Preservation Fund. I have been here long enough. We've called it all 3 things. It is the same thing. It's an account where you hold money aside from year to year so that if there are opportunities, you may purchase land. And following that sometime, I would love to know how much money we have in that fund at this time. Thank you very much. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Betty. Rick, you were next.
Rick Gary, 35 Harding Street. Councilor Consol, John, we've been friends for a long time, but I really took a lot of exception to you stating somehow that you people are the reason I have the ability to speak here. You know, maybe I'm emotional about this today because my son just returned after 2 months in the Coast Guard patrolling the coast of Honduras and Panama, and his son just left to serve in the Marine Corps, and my father served in the Navy. I'm going to credit those people with my right to speak at this meeting, not any of you. Rick, if I may, I thought it was my time.
If I may.
Oh, okay, it's your time.
Prior to this council, there were no public comments. That was my comment.
That's awesome. Okay.
That's
That's false. There's always been public comment. The Republicans increased it to 2 minutes.
We increased it.
You increased it, but there's always been public comment. It's never been eliminated from this council.
Okay, Rick.
Never. I never know a time when there wasn't public comment at this council, ever. I gotta tell you, this is really disturbing tonight, what I'm hearing. All of it. I served on that Locust Farm Committee, and it was overwhelming that we saved the farm. And you all agreed, and you spoke to the current, and you said we will be #1 priority to get a farmer in there. Well, we separated that 10 acres. We did it to entice a farmer. That was the only reason. We were not naive. We knew it might not work, but damn it, it did work. A farmer came forward 3 times with a great proposal. They all readied it by bringing the Gulf Road into this, all of you. That's a separate issue. I'm so sick and tired of hearing that somehow they're tied. They were never tied. You tied it together, all of you. It's a totally separate. If you want to save that land, save it. I think that's awesome. But the people of this town said, let's save the farm. Now, the original proposal was not to save a farm. I agree with that. It was open space. We all knew that the 2 acres with the house could be sold. Absolutely. It could be. But the premise and the priority was to save it as a farm. You said it. All of you said it. You said it to the Hartford Current. You said it to us. The public said it at the meeting. You can say anything you want tonight. But that's what the truth is. That it was about saving agriculture in Wethersfield. And by some miracle, I'm not a real religious person, by some miracle, a farmer came forward who was willing to put his own money into saving those buildings and a farm. And you talk about restricted access. There's 70 acres of access. We want to save agricultural heritage in Wethersfield on that 10 acres. So I'm sick and tired of hearing about no access. This is bull. And Drysdale does win in this. He bought a piece of property, he wanted to put 7 houses. You told him 5. So now, and it's a lot of blasting and there's a lot of grief from the neighbors. So he gets a much better piece of property with guaranteed open space next to it for 6 houses. And the 30,000 square feet was part of the open space that you're now adding to his quote. Nobody else wanted that. Only he cared about that because he couldn't fit 2 more houses in to make it profitable. It doesn't benefit the farmers because they're going to lease the 10 acres. The extra 30,000 square feet doesn't help them. It only helps Drysdale. Let's talk about the truth here. Tired of hearing all this. That's the absolute truth. As being someone who was on the committee and heard it all, that's how it happened. Let's talk about the truth. Thank you.
Thank you, Rick.
Sorry, I didn't mean to get upset.
It needs it. George Rue, 956 Cloverdale Circle. I'll start off softly and calmly. I had a couple of questions. One question Jerry Roberts raised, and it had to do with the teacher's contract. And I had noted that earlier on, that unless some action is taken within 30 days, it happens automatically. But my comment followed on it, and then our mayor, Donna, she said, unless we have a special meeting. And I looked at this as a bunch of real strong people. I think, by doing that, it gives you all cover. So none of you have to say that you either voted for or voted against. And then you can go down at the next political venture, say, I never voted against this. Personally, my reaction, it represents a lack of backbone on somebody's part around here. So I understand that I understood the message correctly. The second point I'd like to raise is at our last council meeting, Mr. Colantonio got up, man that he is, able to say, I'm sorry, which one of our councilmen was not man enough to say when he wrote letters and spread around almost libelous. Gus, congratulations on having some backbone. Lastly, what got that guy excited and got me excited was to have the audacity, John, to say that I speak at your pleasure. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I just couldn't believe it. I'll look around this room and I dare say there's not a person around here that's older than me. And you know from where I come in terms of the right of American citizens to speak their mind. To you, our elected officials, and to have the gall, the unmitigated gall, to say that we never had the right to speak. I was speaking in front of this council when you guys were still in diapers. And talk about getting upset, he got me going. And again, when I offered to give my time to Judy Parker, and I've gone through this with our Board of Education, you cannot give your time away. You've given it away when we were having the sewer problem down behind the high school. It was a very common thing to let families give each other time, because half the time you can't say what you got to say in 5 minutes or 3 minutes or whatever. And there was an occasion when this council or a council shut Woody Warren down, another World War II veteran who's even older than I am. And he's been around a little bit also. And sit down, Mr. Woodward, Woody, your time is up. And I got up and the time was made available. And I think to even have that idea, I personally think, John, that you owe this town, and all of us, and any of us who were veterans and fought in the damn war and got our fannies shot at, which not a one of you, I don't think a one of you has done or had it happen to you, I think you got a level of gall that just kind of nauseates me. Thank you.
Other members of the public wishing to speak? Yes, behind the chief, there's Mr. Woodworth.
Speaking of being shot at, I had this carefully honed 5-minute speech, and then you said 3 minutes. So, but anyway, so picking up where I left off, the Wilkinses also built a state-of-the-art dairy barn with electric manure handling and stainless steel ventilators capping the grand gambrel roof. The post and beam barn is in great shape, as well as being historical. Unfortunately, the flashing around the ventilators on the dairy barn failed long ago. There's considerable rot. It'll take a dedication and hard work to bring that barn back. Fortunately, Rick Nowak, a proud Polish-American farm boy from Knott Street, who has spent his working life maintaining a skyscraper in Hartford, has stepped forward to do for that dairy barn what the Aphorismos have done to the Silas Robbins house on Broad Street. Humble and grand, but nevertheless, it's the same thing. Private citizen in Wethersfield wants to do something for Wethersfield. And I've heard a lot about open space, and I've learned a lot about views, but that view includes the barn, both barns. And that barn is just the gambrel roof dairy barn is an iconic barn, or as classic as Mr. Wagner said. You might not be aware that that Rick Nowak and his friend Joe Wagner spend their time meticulously restoring farm equipment, not for museum display, but to cut and turn and bale hay in hayfields in the meadows and around Wethersfield. They can do it, and they can do those 50, 60 acres of hay that we spent millions of dollars to buy. They could do it right there. It'd be a Wethersfield business and Wethersfield farmers demonstrating for all those. I saw the other day we were down there, all those mothers lined up in their cars to pick their kids up. Every day, hundreds of people come down that street and see that barn. And if they saw it in action, it'd be even better. And could there be educational programs if NOAC buys this place? Yes. Would there ever be any educational programs if you bulldoze the place? Never. Never. That's the point. You want to preserve it for the future. Once you've awarded the bid to NOAC, then you can begin to plan thoughtfully for the future of open space and agricultural preservation. First, begin the process to pre-qualify for the Community Farms Preservation Program, as I suggested last winter, when I think the feeling was that'll be a low priority. Number two, inventory farmland worthy of preservation. 3, have soil on those parcels tested by the U.S. Ag Department. Finally, place a referendum on November's ballot, reauthorizing the $1 million of open space preservation bond authority, or round it up to $2 million or whatever. But let the voters decide. So open space is not just open space. As Mr. Wagner said, number 3 on the list of criteria is preserving Wethersfield's heritage, including farmland. The mystery that keeps getting filled with all these innuendos is, why? Why don't you listen to your mayor? Why don't you 5 guys listen to this lady? And what is it about Polish-American history that maybe is not good enough? I don't know. What's the matter? Doesn't make it worthy. So anyway, I didn't mean to go like that, but as you say, anyway, and I apologize because you guys are up there and your forbearance, or the forbearance of people going back to Judy Parker and Betty Rosanna, is amazing what you could do. One more letter, if I can. I don't know how many minutes I've got on this one, but I got a letter from Ron Olson, Marketing Inspection Representative of the Connecticut Department of Agriculture, in reference to the Wilkes Farm property. He says, I would like to reinforce the ongoing issue of keeping the former Wilkes Farm in active farming that will include the house and barns. If a local individual familiar with farming is willing to take on the responsibility of not only working the land for hay production, but refurbishing the house and barns, the town should seriously consider this opportunity. Not only can a farmer make money haying the land, the scenic aspect of that property is maintained for all. I understand the individual putting in the bid for the property has been cutting hay in the Wethersfield meadows for years using antique farm equipment. The town should at least give individuals such as this an opportunity to succeed, not only for that person's sake, but for the welfare of the land itself. I again want to emphasize the points that are important. The farmer who works their land is in it for the long haul, and the land they work on is an extension of them. They need to succeed in order to live and prosper. If you were able to bring a committed farmer to your town, or find one actually in the town, it is a win-win situation, as that farmer will be a caretaker of the land. So when you go into those deliberations in the next couple of days, especially about the technicalities of the easement, the open space, and so forth, it's true, the open space preservation didn't quite fit this project because farmland preservation was for big farms out in Lebanon and places. The community farmland preservation program is exactly what we needed in Wethersfield in the first place. But I still say the easement DEP gave you, and I could be wrong, but I'd like to be in that same room with the DEP guy and the Ag Department guy and your lawyers when they look at that easement and see why a farmer who owns that, who maintains those barns, can't farm that property. Anyway, thank you so much for all your efforts in putting up with us, and I appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Young. Other members of the public wishing to speak? Mr. Colantonio, then the chief.
Good evening, Gas Colantonio, 16 Morrison Avenue. I'm going to change a little bit. Forget about this farm for now. But anyway, at one of last year's meeting, I stated that I measured the intersection site distance for Tifton Road. This is not going to go away. To be 250 feet, which does not meet the town standards for the 30 miles per hour. When I discussed it the same with the town manager, at the end of the meeting, he asked, did you use a yardstick to measure the distance? I guess the old way we used to. He further stated that the measurements taken by the town were taken by land surveyors that know how to take measurements. In other words, they know what they're doing. Let me tell the town manager that I have worked in the civil engineering field for over 35 years. I am registered in Connecticut and a few other states, and I had the opportunity to review the field notes taken by the town staff and have the following questions or comments. First one, the measurements taken on February 12, 2010, before the construction of the sidewalk, does not represent the current existing conditions. So the southerly edge of pavement in this area moved south. So those measurements, forget it, they don't count anymore. The measurements should have been taken from 15 feet from the edge of pavement based on guidelines, and not 10 feet as measured by the staff. The town has constructed a retaining wall at the southwest corner of Morrison Avenue and Tifton Road that may create a problem with the intersectional sight distance. Also now, the sight line of 350 goes through a utility pole. What you can see without obstruction is only 265 feet, which does not meet the standards. Another thing too that it doesn't show on the sketch that I had to review, without showing the location of the street line, it is impossible to see if the sight line infringes on private property. And one more thing, why did the town waste time to measure intersection sight distance on Hillcrest Avenue, knowing that the police department will not endorse the removing of these stop signs at this location? I don't know why they did it. Now let me express I guess, frustration with the yardstick comment. During the construction of the sidewalk, the inspection by the town was less than desirable. When the contractor started to backfill the back of the curb without removing the existing pavement, the town heard from the residents and made the contractor do it right. That was once. When the contractor constructed additional pavement in front of the house number 26, without the proper pavement thickness, the town heard from the resident one more time and made the contractor do it over again, second time. In few places, the new concrete sidewalk could have been built 2 to 3 inches lower to improve the grading and eliminating low spots on some front lawns. To add insult to injury now, the town decided to place the no parking signs in the back of the walk and not in the snow shelf where they belong. Morrison Avenue must be the only place in town where traffic signs are located in the back of the walk and not on the grass strip. With a small job like this and so many questions, you wonder why the town roads seem to fall apart before the time? Because nobody's checking them. Do I have a couple more minutes?
One.
One more. Then I say thank you for giving me the opportunity to express my opinion for now.
Thank you, Mr. Colantonio.
I don't think I'll take but a few. Most of the people that I know that came here hoping to get a motion to reconsider. Obviously, there's no point in making comments to that. I was unaware. I knew Robert's Rules of Order required one in the majority to make that motion, but I didn't know it had to be at the next meeting. A couple of comments. Your comments about the farmer having the farm for hay fields, Novak having the 10 acres, you can't walk, talk, spit, and whatever on it. Well, you can't put 6 houses there and walk, talk, and spit on those houses or yards either. So there's something wrong with the wording of the referendum question. The referendum question is approved by not only the council approved it, but it's approved by some election body of the state of Connecticut that sits in judgment and makes sure that whoever the responsible people are, the elected people, I'm not going to say politicians, the elected people are, they can't have it favor one way or the other, no matter how they feel about it individually. So I think it's a stretch to say that that referendum question was wrong, because the town's attorneys worked on it, the state's attorney, not the prosecuting ones, the election attorneys worked on it. Everybody approved it, and that's what went on the machine. Now, there may be some question about whether the voters voted for open space or they voted to preserve the farm. But I'll tell you what they didn't vote for. They didn't vote to spend the town's money on it to then later sell it to a developer to make money, to make a swap on Goff Road. And when that original referendum was done, I mean, I was only too glad to go home and get back to what I was doing before, a little garden on the side of the yard and going hunting once in a while down the meadows. But when this thing came up again, I'll tell you, there's a lot of angry people. And I go into the library, people come up to me that I don't even know. And they want to participate in what's going on here tonight. And they're not going to go away. I'm just going to tell you, they're not going to go away. As far as was the land overpriced when the people bought it, I mean, I don't think it was. I saw I saw a couple of pieces of physical evidence that indicated that it wasn't, that even Mr. Drysdale thought it wasn't. But anyway, the most important point that I'll make to you is the voters said it's worth it. It's worth 4.1 or 3.5 or whatever the hell we paid for it. It's worth it to us to add to our taxes and pay our interest and all that stuff to preserve the farm and prevent it from being developed. I'm going to say it again. One thing, I know it's extremely difficult. You know, over the course of my career, I've been up to the legislature a lot. I know a lot of people involved in political life. I'm not going to say you're politicians. I say you're elected people. That makes you kind of quasi-politicians. I know it's very difficult after you take a public position to change your mind and go over to the other side. And that's why I've said here publicly before, and the people that I met with the other night said, you make damn sure you say it here. And that's, I got to compliment the mayor. Because before that original referendum passed, she was as much opposed to it as you were, Deputy Mayor Council. But when the people voted on that referendum to approve it, and the power changed, it went from the Democrats to the Republicans. I can make one more point about that, and then I'm done. She went right over to the other side. She didn't let anybody block it, made sure it went through, yada, yada, yada. Everything that I've been involved with, and I won't get involved with something that's partisan, everything I've been involved with has had both political parties represented on it. The original referendum, there was Betty Rosanna and Judy Parker. I'm sorry, I had a mental, an agent thing there. And on the other side, there was Andy Adel and a couple of other people on the Democratic side. And it's the same thing today with this one. The work we're doing on this, trying to get a motion to reconsider, to approve the NOAC bid, and then, you know what? I mean, I'd favor a tax increase to buy that piece on Gulf Road. They're just separate. To me, they're separate, and it's bipartisan, and that's all we want. Nobody wants to come down here and raise holy hell and make crap out of anybody, but we just want looking for you to reconsider, because NOAC is the proposal that does the best job for the town. The other one's a rip-off of the taxpayer.
Paula DeMoro, 40 Hawthorne Way. Before we close tonight, I think a lot of us here would like something from the council, and that would be if you would please bring a motion to either reverse or table last week's meeting on your decision. We would like to have something on that, so thank you.
Robert Gary, 10 Morrison Avenue. I was here for the beginning when you made council comments, and then I had to go to the Historic District Commission meeting, so I know I missed a lot of activity here, and I had written a letter originally that I didn't submit to the council that I know some of you saw anyway. Then I wrote comments for tonight that are probably not pertinent anymore, so I'll try not to be all over the place. But interestingly, if this farm were in the Historic District, we wouldn't be talking about taking down the buildings because we'd have a commission to protect them. And you know, there is some component of the buildings that are historic and some that are not, but it depends on how you define historic. If you were in the district and we were voting on it, you'd say the farm is historic and the buildings all play a prominent role in the farm and the history of the farm. So there is aspects of all those buildings to consider as historic, maybe except for the house itself. But they're beautiful barns, but whether you keep the barns in the house and whether you tear them down, what you can't replace is agricultural activity in a small suburb where, you know, farming is a thing of the past. We're very fortunate to have 3 active farmers. We have one farm still at risk, Morris Farms, which hopefully we'll also deal with as a town. And we have this farm. And we have an historic opportunity right now to preserve farming on that property in addition to the buildings. I mean, to me, the most important thing is to preserve the buildings and to not make a swap that's not in the best interest of the town. So hopefully there's still an opportunity to make a change there. And I am very much in support of preserving those buildings in any state. Even if you go through New England, a dilapidated barn is a thing of beauty and something that's worth preserving. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gary. Other members of the public wishing to speak? Yes.
Hi, I'm Brenda LaBella of 34 Deer Ledge Lane. Just because this issue was brought up again tonight about dollars. 1.1 miles from the Thornbush property is where Ron Drisdell bought a piece of land called Christopher Court. It's on exactly the same road as Thornbush, although the name changes twice to Highland Street, and then in Rocky Hill it's Hayes Road. It's called Christopher Court. And for that land, I went to the assessor's office in Rocky Hill. So as I say, I deal with facts, not innuendo. On October 10th, 2008, for 3.25 acres on which he built, I believe, 5 houses, he paid $600,000. You think we got shortchanged 80 acres for $3 million? If that's not enough, Mr. Drisdell, on 2/18/2009, 155 France Street, 23 acres in Rocky Hill, which is probably about 2 miles, 2.5 miles from Christopher Court. He paid $1,620,000. I asked Mr. Drisdell personally, because I know him personally, I love him, I'd have him build my house, I have nothing against him. I said, why didn't you purchase the property of the Wilkes farm? He said they wanted $6 million from developers, but they were willing to give it to the town for $3 million or $3.5 million or whatever. So be glad that you got it for the price that you did. And I'm tired of hearing that misnomer or whatever, misinformation. That was a good price. And if you can't pay, what was it, $16 or $20 a year per household, if you can't pay, you only want to pay $10 a year? I mean, you're going to, not waste $10 a year because you wanted it for half price or whatever? I don't want to hear anything about price. I just bought a new car at Mirandy Ford, and I bet I paid more than the guy next door, but I'm not going to ask him what he paid for his car. Because I like the color of mine, and I figured I'm going to look at that color for 12 years, and if I paid $500 more, so be it. End of story.
Thank you, Mr. Pella. Mrs. Steinmetz?
Shirley Steinmetz, 375 Brimfield Road. I was your first speaker, and hopefully, I'm quite sure you're all saying your last speaker. You've been very patient this evening. I just want to follow up on what Bill Knapp said. The Wilkes Farm was a bipartisan committee. I was on that committee. I am still on that committee. The reason I am on that committee, I believe passionately and strongly about open space in Wethersfield and keeping our heritage and having a farmer there to keep that. That's what we need. And I ask you to also reconsider it and do what the people in this town voted for. Thank you.
Thank you. Other members of the public wishing to speak? Seeing none, can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Thank you.
You can make it whatever you want. Yeah. You just can't. There's certain ones you can't. You can't suspend the rule that I can talk about. But, all we did was we authorized him to